parking lot, and it was just people wrapped in blankets, sitting around on the ground, drinking water, trying to recover from what they had just gone through. And you contrasted that scene with people in semi-recovery, with the firemen running in and out across the street and the police moving people back. And it was organized chaos, but I guess that's what it's like. It seems like that. And again, everybody was working together, and they did a great job.
Mayor, before you go, is there a fund or is there a website where people outside the community can go to help?
Yeah, the Fireman's Wife's Fund, they have a GoFundMe page set up. I think we were going to set one up, but we don't want to compete with them. They can direct the money easier to the residents and the patients, and I'm pretty sure that's where this is going to go. So
the firefighters, what? I couldn't hear what you said.
Firefighter wives.
Firefighter wives, like husbands and wives. Okay.
Mayor Coogan, we appreciate your time, and we wish you a lot of luck down there, and send our thoughts to all of the families who suffered.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time, Paul, because I realize how busy you are down there. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon, Marge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was the mayor of the city of Fall River, Paul Coogan, and as you know, this is one of the worst fires we've had nationwide in terms of deaths and injuries in quite some time. 9 people and 30 more injured. It was a terrible, very quick, fast-moving fire.
So in light of the tragedy in Fall River and just coming days after the horror in Texas, we're opening the phone and text lines to ask you about your own disaster preparedness. The number is 877-301-8970. Government entities, corporations often have escape routes, annual security trainings to keep their employees informed and safe in times of crisis. Actually, many of them don't have them or don't honor them in reality. But let's talk about you and your family. How do you ensure safety in your own home, in your daily life? Do you keep a go bag, as they're called, in your car, equipped with flashlights? Make sure you check those batteries. Or are you more the type of person who actively takes the batteries out of your fire alarms at home because, well, you know why. Disaster preparedness in you, flash floods, wildfires. With climate change, they're only going to become more regular aspects of our lives. Fires like the one in Fall River that you couldn't see coming. How are you adapting at 877-301-8970? This came up at our staff meeting this morning. I'm embarrassed to say I have planned nothing. I know Juliet Kime, you mentioned, has put together a communications network with your
family where you're all going to meet
done that.
After a disaster. Yeah.
No go-to bag.
We're supposed to all have go-to
escape routes,
bags.
no evacuation routes. Have you done anything to prepare for any horrible situation that hopefully won't happen?
No.
Okay, that's what I figured. 877-301-8970. Margery's the one who takes the batteries out when. Well,
I don't always do
when
that.
The smoke alarm stuff.
You have to put them. You have to put them back in. But if you have some people, they went for the electric batteries. I did that a few years ago. Electric fire, they're all connected.
Yeah.
So when one goes off, they all go off, and then you can't figure out which one is going off and what the problem is, and all that kind of thing. So I think some people. I can't be the only person to be flummoxed by my electrically connected fire detectors.
You and I are doing no preparedness work, and we're interested to know if you listening are in your own personal situations. Obviously, July 6th to July 12th was Hurricane Preparedness Week in Massachusetts. What did you do during Hurricane Preparedness Week?
I didn't do anything. Did you do anything?
Did you even know it was Hurricane Preparedness Week?
No.
Governor Healy announced it. We just read this morning.
Preparedness Week.
But doesn't that speak to the problem that nobody takes this kind of stuff seriously?
I do know now that people that are looking for houses, for example, they are very concerned about the house's closeness to rivers, because we think of it as the ocean all the time. Well, look at what Texas, that was a river. A lot of these disasters are rivers that overflow.
Did you try buying flood insurance in Brookline? It is insanely expensive.
Do I need flood insurance in Brookline?
Well, who knows?
I don't think so.
Remember with the whole thing about, what was the hurricane? Was it Sandy? That they say had it moved 8 degrees in a different direction?
The whole Back Bay would have been flooded right up to Fenway Park. That's right up to, after all the, at the end of all the the alphabetical streets, Arlington,
And
right up to-
that's a bunch of years ago. And climate change has gotten worse. So we want to know about your own personal preparedness. If you're doing it, give advice to your fellow listeners, etc.
Okay, we are not prepared. I mean, I think that's fairly clear. I heard my favorite podcast this morning, The Daily, besides, of course, the Chuck Toddcast, talked about how individual politicians in these areas near this terrible disaster had asked the state for money to get a siren system, and the state wouldn't pay.
You're talking about Fall River?
No, I'm talking about Texas.
In Texas. I'm sorry.
And the state wouldn't pay enough for the siren system, how they asked for different notification systems. The state would, I mean, I think they've got a lot of answering to do that. Greg Abbott, who is not a very, I think he's kind of a terrible governor, but he's got a lot to answer for because these places did ask. But there was an also...
You're evil if you ask those questions.
You're evil if you ask those questions. That was the president. That's what the president said. Yeah. But the other thing is that this Camp Mystic, where they had the tragedy with the children campers dying, they added on new cabins, not just in the flood zone, but in the flood way. In other words, if this is a flood, this is the way it's going to go. They did that just a few years ago, which seems insane. So
yeah, but I've said this to you for years. You know how most politicians, not all, prepare their constituents for disasters? They hope the disaster doesn't happen while they're in office. They're really unwilling, for the most part, to spend money on preparedness things because there's not immediate gratification for the politician who does it. In any case, actually, look who we have on the line. We have the former president of the Boston Firefighters, now the international president. We were just speaking to the mayor about him. Ed Kelly, we haven't talked to you in quite a while. Ed, thank you so much for your call.
Hi.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Margery. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure,
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Did you hear? Have you heard? I assume you've heard what Mayor Coogan's response to your comment about lives would have been saved if the fire department had adequately been staffed. Did you hear what he said, Ed?
Yeah, I did. I was a little disturbed at trying to paint this as politics, handing out buttons at the fire scene. This is the truth can be very inconvenient for people, especially politicians. And in this case, there is, unfortunately, the best time to have a conversation about the staffing of a fire department is before the tragedy. And unfortunately, the best time to call attention to where we have public safety issues is in the wake of a tragedy. Fall River is not alone understaffing their fire departments, and it's a major issue. But at the end of the day, had that department been fully staffed, like, say, their neighboring city, New Bedford, they would have had 8 more firefighters on scene responding in with the Fall River fire companies, and that would have been 8 more people, firefighters, throwing ground ladders, rescuing people out of that second and third floor of that building. And we may not have been able to save the people that were in the fire room and right near the fire, but those people that succumbed to smoke inhalation on the second floor, third floor, we could have got to them with 8 more firefighters.
Ed Kelly, did any of your local leaders reach out to Mayor Coogan or anybody else in the city prior to the fire saying there was an understaffing problem?
Yes, this has been something going on in Fall River for decades. The Fall River firefighters have been fighting. They were reduced from, I believe, 220 firefighters down to about 165 now. It's been an age-old battle in Fall River.
Well, Ed, you know that Mayor Coogan says that the 35 firefighters per shift and 20 floaters was what the fire chief of the department requested. So was the fire chief at fault here?
I don't believe that the fire chief is at fault. I think that this is about political priorities when it comes to budget time. I'm sure the fire chief would have gladly staffed those companies at the national standard of 4 firefighters per company. And he didn't have the budget for it.
But one other thing, Ed, is one of the wonders of fire alarms is that happily people have been able to escape a lot of fires because of fire alarms. And I know there's been a lot of talk in Boston and elsewhere about, do we need this many firefighters, because happily there are fewer fires. And, that's why one of the reasons you see a lot of firefighters going to car accidents, to be on hand at car accidents, because there's not as many fires. So you think that the budgeters might, they're in a squeeze to some degree, are they not?
Well, the truth is, there's not less fires. There's less major fires because we can handle them.
Yeah.
And We respond in a timely fashion, and we put them out, and you never hear about them. There's minimal damage to places. In those fire alarms, we get notified. People have cell phones. You know, if you go back to the days of pre-cell phones, these fires, you know, would get out of what is like the room of origin, which we could put out usually with one hose line, and into the hallway and up the stairwell. And that's when we've had major multiple alarm fires, which we still have. You know, we had 2 fires in the city of Boston the other night with people jumping out windows at one of the fires. There were pretty significant fires. So this is not something that just this week, Somerville, Cambridge, Brookline, mentioned Boston had 2 fires. It's not that we have less fires, it's that we have less major fires because we successfully combat them.
Hey, Ed Kelly, we only have 30 seconds. Very quickly, can you give us a rough guesstimate? What percentage of the fire departments in Massachusetts would you say are understaffed, like you contend Fall River is, quickly if you can?
I can't give you a percentage, Jim, but I can tell you most fire departments do not adequately staff up to national standards, which is no excuse. We have 9 people that lost their lives.
Ed Kelly, we really appreciate your calling in. Thank you so much for your time. Ed Kelly is the former president of the Boston Firefighters Union, now the international president of the Firefighters Association.
Okay, we're talking about preparedness for fires, for floods, for hurricanes, for everything else. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, BPR, on GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. More of your calls coming back at 877-301-8970.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, it's not easy being green. Such is the life of Wicked's Elphaba. Author Gregory Maguire joins us to discuss his latest book, which returns to Oz for Elphaba's origin story. Plus, comedian, actress, and singer-songwriter Margaret Cho on her latest album, her decades in comedy, and the legendary comedians who largely influenced her. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting As You Like It, this summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's lush romantic comedy celebrating the joys and follies of human nature, July 23rd through August 10th. comshakes.org. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Margery Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We did not know that Ed Kelly was going to call in. We're glad that he did. But we'll try in the remaining few minutes we have to get back to the topic at hand. Obviously, there was the disaster in Fall River, the disasters in Texas. We know about the floods in Vermont, right here, actually, 93 and beyond. Are you prepared in your family, in your home? Are you prepared for a disaster? Do you have a go bag? Go bag, according to Axios, a 3-day supply of non-perishable food, 3 gallons of water per person, Margery. Medical supplies, first aid kit.
If you have 4 people in your house, that's 12 gallons of water.
That is correct. Very good math.
Car.
ID, passports, stuff for your pets, etc. Is anybody doing the right thing here? I would assume the answer is no. Sarah in the car. I hope I'm wrong. Sarah in the car. You're next on BPR. Welcome.
Thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
I'm an executive director at a assisted living.
You're going to be doing the right thing.
Where are you? Sarah, can you move around a little bit wherever you are? The connection's breaking up. Sarah said if you didn't hear her, she is the executive director of a senior living, an assisted living facility, which is what the facility in Fall River where the fire was. Sarah, try again.
Yes, so I'm an executive director at a assisted living in the Boston area.
Yeah.
And so the assisted living and nursing homes, they're 2 different things.
Right,
That's why we're governed by 2 different agencies.
Right.
And so I think, the regulations are only as good as the staff and the company enforcing them and making sure that we follow those. And, it makes me wonder what kind of procedures they had at the Gabriel House, because they're certainly different from where we are.
Well, there are.
But I
You
think
read,
a
as
big part
Margery
of it-
said, to Mayor Coogan, there were reports about fire drills not
fire
having
drills.
no evacuation plan, and it seems to me that's not just on the facility; it's on the regulatory agency, the Office of Aging and Independence, to make sure there's compliance.
Also, reports of an elevator not working
Right.
that had recently been fixed.
Is your experience that the state agency is doing its job when it comes to overseeing
Yeah.
assisted living facilities?
Yeah, I mean, they come in every 2 years and they go over every report we have. We have to do a fire drill every quarter for every shift. Everyone who's part of that fire drill has to sign off on it. And the agency comes in and they look at when we had the fire drill, they look at the time cards to make sure that those people were there for the. So, I mean, you can fudge the reports, but then you end up with a mess like this.
Got it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Sarah, thank you
we
very much.
appreciate it.
Thank
Call
you very
again,
much for the call.
please.
We have some texters, longtime listeners, Jim, and of course, you know what they're all suggesting we have for the emergency situation.
Eton emergency
Eton
crank radio.
yeah.
Okay.
Because it's,
By the
solar,
way, that's
it's solar powered.
You're laughing about that.
No, I'm not.
That is exactly why that thing that we have during pledge time is so valuable. By the way,
well,
you don't need electricity.
Right.
You crank the damn thing.
But you must see this with your neighbors, especially if you don't live right in the city. People that live further, out in the suburbs or even more rural areas. I'm amazed at how people prepare. They have these generators, so they'll be ready. And I think Jamie over there has a generator to be ready if the lights go off. You get the refrigerator still running, all that kind of stuff. Some people have these great plans going. They know where everything is in their house. They do have that go bag with their insurance papers and their license and the pictures they want. There's stories that say that you should make sure for your kids that you have their favorite blankie to take with you, where you know where it is, and the teddy bears and toys. I mean, there's some people. I wish I was one of those people that
Do
did
you
all
really
these
know
things.
any? Or are you making this up? You know one person who does that?
There's someone in my neighborhood
One person.
down the Cape, and everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. I wish I was one of those people, but I'm not.
Let's go to Joe
in the car.
Hi, Joe. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I guess I'm pretty well prepared. To begin with, I do have a whole house generator, which went on last week when he had the big storm down here.
Yeah.
It runs my air conditioner in addition to my heater in the winter. In addition, my house is monitored by a private company that should there's any type of smoke, it sets off the alarm, and the alarm company will call me and say, "Are you okay? Is there smoke? Do we need to call the fire department for you?"
Wow.
Hell, I wear an Apple Watch that if I am on the ground working in the yard or something, "You fallen? You okay?" You have to say, "Oh yeah, I guess I'm okay."
Hey, Joe, it'd be great if everybody. Hey,
Flashlights up
Joe, how expensive is that service?
It's probably $300 or $400 a year for the monitoring, but you've got to install it in the house, which is thousands and thousands.
Joe,
why do you think?
Every fire alarm is connected to it.
Why do you think you're
Fire
like
alarm is
this?
connected to it in the windows.
Can you hear
I'm
me,
sorry?
Joe? I was just going to ask you, why do you think you're like this? Was this because you got kids, or
As
because your
compared to
parents
me and
made you, or-
Margery.
Yeah, what differentiates you from people that are
Like us.
like us? Yeah.
When you build a house, there's two things I think of when I build or do remodel a house. It says, while you're at it, and you may as well. Putting in new windows and putting in new electric systems, it's just, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money to me. It's going to save my life.
Joe, that's great.
If it goes off, they call me.
We were hoping somebody like you called, and you did. Thank you so much for the call. What do you think is the answer to your own question, Margery? Why are we a certain way? And by the way, you would think maybe we're different when our kids were young. I don't think I was any different when my kids were at home and were young.
Well, I think
What's the difference between us and Joe?
I think it's part of where I live. I live in the city. I'm close to stores. I'm close to the firehouse. I'm close to the MBTA. I'm not living.
That is not.
I think that's part of it.
What, you think you're making a conscious decision? I don't need to do
I think that
preparedness
no matter what
because the
happens,
fire department is down the street?
I can walk down to Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. I'll be. I don't have to have 12 gallons in my car because I figure someone in the neighborhood. I think that's part of it. If I lived out in the middle of nowhere, I think I'd be much more nervous, wouldn't you?
By the way, a texter is probably in poor taste, but it was fun. The anonymous texter said, when the fire alarm in my house goes off, I know dinner is ready, which is probably your house too. In any case,
that's right. We have this fire alarm in the kitchen. They're always going off. You have to put like a hairnet over the firefighter in the kitchen. It keeps them from going off all the time. I learned that.
This may not be the time to look back at all these issues, as the mayor suggested, but on our podcast, you'll hear what the mayor had to say about the criticism from the international president of the firefighters and the head of the firefighters called in to voice his position. Ultimately, those questions need to be answered like they need to be answered in Texas.
Okay, coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to the great Michael Kirk of Frontline, their latest incredible, troubling film, Trump's Power and the Rule of Law. It debuts tonight on PBS. I'm Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR and GBH and NEPM at the Boston Public Library.
In the Netherlands, some teens and young adults are discovering Christianity from their social feeds.
This young generation is like open-minded. They don't have to go to church. They can find everything on social media. So they discover like a new way of being a church.
How Gen Z is reimagining faith and community next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, helping families overcome the college planning stress. Committed to providing trusted guidance with calculators, step-by-step videos, and more. Details at mefa.org. And Newport Mansions, presenting The Gilded Age and Beyond, a conversation with Tony Award-winning actor Christine Baranski, moderated by Jared Bowen of GBH's The Culture Show, August 7th at the Elms in Newport. Information at newportmansions.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. We're live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Donald Trump's executive power grab gets the Frontline treatment tonight in Trump's Power and the Rule of Law. We're joined on Zoom by Michael Kirk, director, writer, producer of the film. It airs tonight on Frontline. It is terrifying, by the way, at 10 p.m. Eastern on GBH2, NEPM 57, and online at pbs.org/Frontline at 7 p.m. Eastern. Michael Kirk, once again, you've done it. Welcome to the show. Good to speak to you.
You too. Nice to see you.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hi. Well, this film, as Jim said, and we said in the intro, is a lot about the presidential power. But Frontline talks about how this began back in the era of Nixon and Watergate. So go back a little bit to tell us where this began.
There's always been a lot of talk, going all the way back to Alexander Hamilton, that presidents should have more power than the other two branches of the government. It was laughed at, always been a marginal thing, didn't get very far. But when Richard Nixon answered the question from David Frost about where he said, if the president does it, it's not illegal.
Yeah.
That lit up a lot of people's candles, especially in the conservative world and in the world of almost every president. You guys know this. They want more power than they have. They're frustrated. They can't get their agendas done. And a lot of that in the recent time, in the 6 or so presidents I've covered, a lot of that is the result of what Nixon did and the way that Congress responded to Watergate, which was to constrain the president pretty mightily. And many of our presidents, up until about 9/11, were really felt, they couldn't do everything they wanted to do. George W. Bush, really, when 9/11 happened, said, I've got to move fast. And he had John Yoo over at the Office of Legal Counsel, and Dick Cheney and all the names we're familiar with. They swung into action, and it started to light a kind of fire under neoconservatives and others. Now, this is the way the presidency ought to operate. And that idea did not go away and has been being nurtured slowly but surely in the minds and the hearts of a lot of people we talked to in this film who support Donald Trump and wanted to see him as the avatar and the banner carrier for this idea of an enhanced, powerful president who's able to operate, especially because he had a Congress of Republicans who could test the limits. How far could they go? And how many things could they do under what they considered to be their mandate when Trump got elected?
Yeah, this conservative lawyer you mentioned, John Yoo, who's in your film quite a bit. By the way, everybody's in this. Megyn Kelly, Ty Cobb, former lawyer to Trump who's turned on him. Steve Bannon is in this film a lot. A whole bunch of names you know, and we're going to talk in a minute about a guy Margery and I never heard of before who seems to be a really powerful force. Explain, which maybe you did, unitary executive is a term that probably almost nobody in your audience or ours has heard of before, but that's the theory on which you argued and Trump operates, correct?
Yes, exactly. The theory is that if you have we've all learned in civics class, maybe not anymore, I'm not sure, that there were three divisions of the government. There was the executive, who was supposed to execute the laws that were passed by Congress and funded by Congress, and the court was supposed to keep everybody on the straight and narrow. And the president could go as far as he could go, and every president I've ever known or reported on wanted to go much further than they ever got to go. And it has been the perception that a president needs to be able, especially in the modern era, to move with great flexibility, both overseas and in the United States, with all kinds of problems. And that was underscored in 9/11. It has been underscored, according to conservatives and a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, when America has gone off the rails to progressivism, to DEIism, to whatever it is. And immigrants have been taking over, and there's murders and rapes and animals being eaten, whatever it was. The idea is that a president, and only a president, is elected by the vast majority of the people. Nobody elected John Roberts, the Supreme Court Chief Justice. Nobody elected, not everybody elected whoever was running the Republican Party in the Senate and the House. So the president is ours. And the president, based on that and the mandate that he perceives and the things he ran on, should be able to be relatively unfettered when it comes to the vast majority of things. The problem is when that unfetteredness when that rubber meets the road on due process of the law, habeas corpus, other concepts, where suddenly Americans traditionally and the Supreme Court and judges say, wait a minute, I think he's going too far. Well, Donald Trump has a plan, which is to push all that as far as it can go, because it's a demonstration of his power and his ability to enact the laws that he thinks his supporters elected him to do. And certainly Steve Bannon articulately makes that argument forcefully and without giving quarter to judges, justices, the power of the Supreme Court, or anything else. And the great risk here is if the Supreme Court, if it all gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decides, seems kind of unlikely given recent events, but the Supreme Court decides Trump cannot do something, maybe in the immigration world, has to have due process for all those people that got flown out in the middle of the night to El Salvador. If Justice Roberts and the Supreme Court justices decide there's some moment that they just can't go beyond, and they say to Trump, don't do it, and then the decision is, will Trump do it or not? And as Bannon told us, Donald Trump has no intention of backing off, and he will not blink at that moment, that great contest of the wills at that moment. And that's when everybody in this film, the conservatives, the arch conservatives, that's when they all say we're in a constitutional crisis.
By the way, we're talking to Michael Kirk, who's the primary force with some of his colleagues for the new Frontline documentary airing tonight, Trump's Power and the Rule of Law. By the way, when you say the rubber meets the road, you know what else happens? Republicans in Congress go on vacation, Michael. You know, we know about Bannon. Bannon has some great lines in this thing, talking about the people they're going after as all gutless cowards.
Yeah.
He says PBS is going to crater, he says to your reporter there. But the guy Margery and I never heard of before, who is really a force. I think he said he's described as the viceroy. Here is Mike Davis, Trump legal advisor. He's characterizing the administration's deportation of migrants to El Salvador as a military operation. Again, this is Trump legal advisor Mike Davis.
I'm happy those planes landed in El Salvador because the president had a constitutional duty to ignore that lawless and dangerous order and land those planes in El Salvador. This Boasberg, the clown, thinks he's the commander-in-chief. He thinks he can order the president to turn around military planes carrying terrorists. What the hell is Jeb Boasberg thinking that he thinks he can expose and sabotage an ongoing military operation?
By the way, Boasberg is the judge, if it wasn't clear, a federal judge who did order the planes to be turned around, which of course they were not.
I never heard anything so lawless in my life from a lawyer that I just heard from this guy who's the president's legal advisor. He's talking about a military operation with immigrants. They don't know whether they were members of a gang or not. They don't know if they did anything besides come to the country illegally. They don't know who these people were. I mean, how can he say these things? I was shocked.
Mike Davis is a very well-known inside Washington. 4,500 appearances on Fox News, he said, on behalf of Donald Trump when Trump was in Mar-a-Lago. He certainly has the credentials. He was the chief counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee. So he's not, I mean, you can take what he says for hyperbole, he's doing it for effect, or he really means it. That's why it's in there, so that people can make a decision about what they think about this. But this guy has the ear of the President of the United States and others inside that inner circle. He's very highly regarded and very highly respected as a force. And the reason he's in our film is because he's a reflection of that argument that must be happening virtually every day around Donald Trump, and was happening virtually every day, as Davis tells it, as Bannon tells us, when they were sitting in Mar-a-Lago and Trump was basically a dead man walking.
But I don't want to belabor this, but when he says the president's constitutional duty to land those planes in El Salvador, what constitutional duty?
Margery, are you kidding or are you not kidding?
No,
Which lawyer who works for Donald Trump isn't Mike Davis in another set of clothes?
Well, he seems very extreme to me and very scary to me and just lying to me. And it's kind of, I don't know.
Unlike Rudy Giuliani.
I don't mean to be Pollyanna, but I'm kind of surprised. You're smirking
Margery,
over there, too.
Margery, you're obviously not watching enough Fox television.
I guess I'm not.
Michael
Okay.
Kirk, you know, one of the most terrifying, this whole thing was terrifying. And by the way, one of the things you do brilliantly, you don't need to hear this from me, is you weave together even those things which we already know into a whole that where the sum is far greater than the parts. I hope I explained that well, but that's what I took away from this thing. Peter Baker, who's a very well-respected writer for the New York Times, is in your piece pretty regularly too. And the thing that really stuck with me and Margery is when he talked about his usual sources, the people he would go to through the years, if not decades, in Washington, were, quote, too scared to talk. Could you flesh that out a little bit for us?
I mean, the thing that just woke me up and said, get in here and make this film for the last 6 months, was this idea that lots of people I was talking to in Washington, and Peter reflects this much better than I ever could. He says people are afraid in Washington. Sources, regular sources who he goes to, who could be quoted on both sides of the aisle. And, you know, and we have very good luck talking to people on both sides of the aisle, and I think being perceived as fair and at least trying our best to get both sides reflected, or all the sides reflected. And Peter too. And when he said the extent to which people are afraid. They're afraid to be quoted. They're afraid because their son has a grant, or their spouse or partner has a grant to work for a federal agency, or an uncle or a father who works for a federal agency, afraid of the retribution, afraid of the revenge impulse among people in Washington right now. It was, to me, a kind of chilling reflection of, listen, we all know presidents are tough. LBJ was a head knocker, a knee breaker, unbelievably, but all in the quiet, all in the background, all in that. But here, as Peter is saying it, it sounds to me like Donald Trump is doing all those things, all the quiet words out loud and as loud as he can, and the reflection of that across all the agencies as he tests where his power can go, as he attacks low-hanging fruit like the immigration issue or USAID, just to see what will happen. Will the Congress fight back? Will the people, people don't care about foreign aid, so let's test firing all the people at USAID. People care about, I can convince people that immigration is a really important safety issue, if nothing else. And that's how they can operate in that field, believing that they have the mandate. And according to Bannon, they do have the mandate. They do feel that millions of people will support them. So that energy operating in Washington right now is something I've never experienced. And I think it is a reason to make a film like this, and it is a reason for viewers and listeners to be concerned on one side or the other. Where are we headed? What's going on? Because Washington is not the same place that it used to be, and the results of whatever is happening right before our eyes, especially the inevitable showdown with the Supreme Court, is something that everybody I usually talk to in Washington is worried about.
Well, Peter Baker from the New York Times goes beyond talking just about Trump's what he's done on immigration and what he's done on tariffs, and talks about he's reshaping the entire country. It's not just getting rid of inspector generals, et cetera. The culture of the country too. What does he say?
Well, this is the moment for moving beyond. What is essentially happening is he is moving beyond just those political things, and he is, and I think he believes that, and maybe he's right, that his supporters, they don't care what goes on at the Kennedy Center. They don't want it to be whatever it seems to be, and they don't care about the Smithsonian or any of the museums. That they think it's all gone too elitist, too different from what they think. That's the way he's reading the population. And it's certainly the way people around him are reading it, and he's acting on it. And the fact is, it's changing the culture of the country, and maybe that's the inevitable outcome of elections. Or maybe if people don't like it, as somebody in the film says, it's not going to be the court that's going to save people who don't like the way things are going here. It's going to be the midterm elections. It's going to be whether people do whatever people do to indicate to the White House this is not the way they want everything to go.
Here's another, I think, important voice in your film, another person I hadn't heard of, Peter Keisler, who was acting AG under George W. Bush, now Trump critic, discussing the, quote, draining of the swamp. Peter Keisler, here he is.
They fired more than 24 career prosecutors, people who had worked either on the investigations and cases against Donald Trump himself or against the people who had stormed the Capitol on January 6th. They also forced out about half a dozen or so of the senior career leaders at the FBI. They were fired as a group because they were not deemed to be sufficiently politically reliable. The message that sends is your job may depend on you being perceived as supporting the president's personal and political interests. And that sets the stage for turning law enforcement into another instrumentality of politics, where if you're the subject or a target of an investigation, how you're treated may depend on what your politics are. And that's the opposite of what the system should be doing.
A little more in the film from Peter Casey.
How about the music? I mean, talk about.
Well, that's
I felt
Michael
like
Kirk.
I was waiting for an entire family to be slaughtered at any second there. That was such scary and ominous music.
Blame that man right there. Hey, Michael Kirk, you know, the backstop for all this, you intimated this a minute ago, is supposed to be the courts when everything else is coming apart at the seams and everybody are, quote, gutless cowards, as I said, Bannon says in your film. But you seem to be saying at the end of the film, or your people with whom you're talking, is that while on many things the Supreme Court has, not your words, mine, gone on bended knee, the immunity decisions, some of the immigration decisions, that there's also a feeling that even when they want to rule against his excessive behavior around executive actions or anything else, they are self-limiting, if that's the right word, for fear that if they go too far, that he'll ignore the order, and then that constitutional crisis arises, which is even more upsetting. Did I describe that adequately, Michael?
That's right. If you talk to people like Peter Kiesler and others, Michael, Judge Ludig, Ty Cobb, the thing and these are conservatives. The thing they're most concerned about, and Ty Cobb, for example, was one of Justice Roberts' partners for a long time.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And he said the guy is, he's the heart and soul, a constitutional authority, and a guy who believes in right and wrong, and all the things you can say about somebody that are glowing. But they all say, the Chief Justice, who, as you suggest, Jim, did sign the immunity. The right of the president to have immunity and not commit crimes as president of the United States. That and his election were get out of jail free cards for Donald Trump. And as I said before, the rocket fuel that's led us to where we're now. But I think they all think the Supreme Court will be very careful about and try to avoid as much as possible. And so will the lower courts, by the way, and the appeals court about the Justice Boasberg stuff. It has been holding the case for 2 months, moving it forward. This is all a kind of wariness of getting too definitive with their findings about the president, trying to find places on the edges where they can not go, or they can go, but readjust and recalibrate the lower courts. Sending a lot of things back. It's not they're being declared as Trump wins in the news, but actually what they are is their recalibrations being sent back down so that the court doesn't have to sit in judgment, because what they do not want to do is face a due process fight, a really deeply constitutional fight across an abyss with Donald Trump. And these people, Ty Cobb and others, tell us that Roberts will do what he can to avoid that fight because he doesn't have an army and he doesn't really have a constituency. And what do you do if the president of the United States turns his thumbs down and says, "I'm not going to follow that. I don't believe that's the law, and you guys can go pound sand."
Michael, I think we say to you every few months how important your work is, and it's a must-see.
It is a must-see.
So let us say it one more time. This is really an important film, and thanks for it, and thanks for your time today, as always, Michael Kirk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been speaking to Michael Kirk, whose latest effort for Frontline is Trump's Power and the Rule of Law. It airs tonight at 10 on PBS, GBH2, and NEPM 57. pbs.org/frontline for more information. Michael, thanks again. The show continues here in Boston, but for you listening on NEPM, tune into the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Monty Calise talk with Keith Lockhart about their time at Tanglewood. After the noon news, we're going to be talking with Trenni Casey, then CNN's John King, and more on Margery Egan. He's Jim Bradley. We're at the Boston Public Library.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts now through August 1st at New England Conservatory. mmb.international. Frontline investigates the high-stakes showdown between Donald Trump and the courts over presidential power, interviewing Trump allies, opponents, and experts. Watch Trump's Power and the Rule of Law tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR Live from the Boston Public Library. It's Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. On 220-somethings winning their first ever Wimbledon titles this week, bringing the sport fully into its Gen Z era. We'll also talk about Caitlin Clark and her team coming to the TD Garden tonight, and how horse racing may be yet another victim of Trump's anti-immigrant animus.
I'm Margery Egan. After that, we're looking at climate solutions and innovation taking place in our own backyard. We're joined by Joe Curtatone, president of the Alliance for Climate Transition, and Emily Reichert from the Mass Clean Energy Center. All that, plus our Two More Things segment, that's next on the second hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
In Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Russia does not appear to be rattled by U.S. threats of economic penalties and weapons assistance to Ukraine. The Russian military is continuing its assault. Meanwhile, President Trump's vexed the Russian leader Vladimir Putin is not committing to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine.
I'm not done with him, but I'm disappointed in him. Bill, we had a deal done 4 times, and then you go home and you see he just attacked a nursing home or something in Kiev. I said, what the hell was that all about?
President Trump in an exclusive phone interview with the BBC. Trump also talked about NATO. He says a military alliance is no longer obsolete now that they are, quote, paying their own bills. Trump's expected to make a second state visit to the UK this September. The Supreme Court has ruled the administration may continue its efforts to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. President Trump on social media says the ruling will facilitate returning the functions to states. Here's NPR's Corey Turner.
The court reversed a lower court order that had blocked the administration from firing some 1,400 department workers. Those layoffs were part of President Trump's stated goal of closing the Education Department. The ruling from the court's conservative majority came with no explanation. In a blistering dissent, liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor called it indefensible, while President Trump hailed it as a major victory for parents and students. Plaintiffs had initially gotten an injunction from a federal judge by arguing a president cannot close a department created by Congress. Yesterday's ruling allows the dismantling of the department to resume before the lower courts have decided if it is legal. Corey Turner, NPR News.
Some 24 states and the District of Columbia have sued the Trump administration. They want the White House to release billions in frozen education funding. Tributes abound today for the legendary runner Vajra Singh, believed to be the world's oldest marathon runner. He died yesterday. He was 114 years old. Indian authorities say Singh passed away from injuries sustained in a hit-and-run incident. Singh was featured in multiple videos and documentaries as an example that one's never too old to start over. He'd lost loved ones, struggled with depression, left India to live with family in the UK, then took up running. And did he ever? At the age of 89, he ran his first marathon in London. At 100 in Toronto, he became the first centenarian to complete a marathon. A year later, Singh became the oldest torchbearer of the 2012 London Olympics. He used his platform to promote charities. One of his secrets to longevity. Singh advising in this documentary by the UK's Redbridge Museum, don't eat too much and sleep better. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard University has announced it's extending its hiring freeze that was enacted earlier this year, and in doing so, it says cuts from the Trump administration are expected to cost the school about $1 billion a year. In an email sent to staff yesterday and obtained by Mass Live, Harvard administrators listed federal actions that have hit Harvard's bottom line big time, including canceled research grants and contracts, reductions to the the budgets of the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health, and the threat of ending Harvard's ability to accept foreign students. Email also says that President Trump's passage of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill dramatically increased attacks on income from Harvard's endowment. Harvard has multiple legal challenges underway against the Trump administration. Officials on Nantucket preparing for the arrival of Vice President J.D. Vance, who will visit the island a week from today on Tuesday, July 22nd, for a Republican National Committee fundraiser. He will leave the island the following day. Airport manager Warren Smith says police made him aware of possible demonstrations that could happen in the days or moments leading up to Vance's arrival. Smith adds that there will be space provided for people to exercise their rights of free speech. In sports, Major League's Baseball All-Star Game is tonight. Red Sox back in action on Friday. There's a heat advisory in effect for today with a mixture of sun and clouds. Hazy hot in Henry today. Temperatures near 90 degrees. We are at 86 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Margery Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to be here with Juliet Kayyem. Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys is going to zoom in with an update on their new album. Hello again, Jim.
All about resistance, I should say.
I
We
know.
talk about that a lot on the show. Joined now live at the library by Trenni Casey. She's anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hi there, Trenni.
Hi. Best
How
of my
are you?
knowledge, no relation to Ken Casey.
No relation to Ken Casey, that's right. So, Caitlin Clark, tonight at the Boston Garden.
Tonight at the Boston Garden. Well, TD Garden.
TD Garden, that's right.
Same thing.
Excuse me. TD Garden. So give us the scoop. I'm sure it's sold out.
It's a sold out game. It's great. So they're playing the Sun, the 3-8 Sun. Not exactly they're kind of in a rebuilding year. I think they're up for sale. They are up for sale, and so they're I think trying to maybe cut back a little bit this year and sort of reset. But still should be an exciting game. The last time the Sun and Fever played each other, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Caitlin Clark got into it with a couple of Sun players. Like she bumped into one, and
I didn't know that
JC
was the
Sheldon
Sun.
accidentally accidentally poked her in the eye, and then there was pushing and shoving and technicals and flagrant twos. So yeah, I mean I think Caitlin Clark just really she brings a lot of fans. We're doing our show live from the Garden tonight. Yep, I'll be on the concourse going live. I just wrote my show email and I was like, listen, this is a great opportunity, guys, for us to really talk about women's sports and the future of it and just kind of have a little different style of show than we normally do tonight. We can talk about the Red Sox and Patriots any day. So yeah, we're going to be live. Jennifer Rosati is going to be on our show right at the top. Chris Gasper from the Boston Globe, who wrote a great column in today's Boston Globe about the Caitlin Clark effect and the WNBA and what a great league it is. He's going to be on the show with us, among others. So yeah, it should be a good show.
Are tickets expensive?
I looked it up.
I should have looked at this.
To get seats on the floor or near the floor, it's a mere $2,200.
Oh.
So that's a bargain. The nosebleed seats, which are the worst seats, where for a Celtics game, correct me if I'm wrong, some of them are available for $10. The cheapest one I found was $107. The average $149.
Yeah.
This is like the hottest ticket in town and then some. I mean, it's incredible.
It's incredible. And one of the things that we, brought up today about something we want to discuss, and Gasper brings this up in his column, is this Caitlin Clark effect on the league, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, she's the draw, but it doesn't make everybody in the league happy. There are a lot of players. She gets into it a lot. She gets a lot of hard fouls on her. She is a scrappy player, as we know from her time at Iowa. I always kind of bring up that she can be kind of a whiny player. Her dad, I remember distinctly I think it was her senior year, run when they made it to the Final Four again and failed to win a title. She was complaining about a call and getting into it and kind of hanging her head. You could see they flashed to her dad. They took a shot of her dad in the stands, and he was like, "Knock it off, basically. Stop acting like this."
To her?
Yeah, like,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
stop whining. So I think she gets under people's skin because I think she's really competitive. The athlete I sort of think of that people don't like here because he's sort of like this is Sidney Crosby. Like Sidney Crosby's always chirping at everybody, can kind of
Who's
be a little
Sidney
whiny.
Crosby?
He's
Hockey
a
player,
hockey player, one of the best
our
hockey
time,
players
yeah.
of all time. Yeah, plays for
Sorry.
the Pittsburgh Penguins.
But she doesn't. I don't see a record of her in the pros doing that. She generally.
She can be a
holds her-
little.
she can?
She can be a little. She can poke the bear a little, but that's just who she is. She's feisty. She's a competitor. Like my whole thing is, you know, it's okay to criticize her for that. Like I'm not saying she's Draymond Green by any way, in any way, shape, or form, because she's not like that. But like, okay, Marcus Smart, people, you know, guy or Brad Marchand, like players like that. When they're on your team, you love them, right? Because they kind of get under other players' skin. I think she's sort of like that, but I think there's more to it with her. I think there are a lot of players in the NBA who came before her, both white and black players, who feel like, listen, I was a better player in college than her, or I had a better WNBA career. It took me years to even get noticed the way that Caitlin Clark has, and I think there's some resentment and jealousy about just how big she is after
Why
just
is
a
it,
year
you
and a
think?
half.
The 3-pointers, is that it with
I
her?
mean, I don't know. I guess somehow, not to say that she's not special. She obviously is. She's the best three-point shooter. There's a great piece in the Globe. I think I think we sent it to you. The distance.
Yes.
She shoots her three-pointers from an average of like 28 or 29 feet away.
Yeah. 3 feet beyond the
3 feet
the line,
beyond the
yeah.
line. And like, you know, the next best player is like a foot more in or something. And so listen, it's great, but there is something about her style of play. I mean, she went to Iowa. It's not like she went to Tennessee or UConn or Baylor or LSU, all these like really big Notre Dame women's basketball schools. You know, some might say that it's because she is straight and white and dated the, you know, Iowa quarterback,
I didn't know
the University of
quarterback,
Iowa. So some people may say it's that. I just think sometimes there's someone who captures your attention, and the way that they play the game, you know, makes you more interested. And I think it's great for the game. And if I'm the WNBA, I am telling other players, like, do you want this to be a popular league? Do you want this to be a league where we sign huge TV deals like we just did with NBC, ESPN, and Amazon? Do you want your contracts to be bigger because we're getting this money? Do you want more of the perks? Then you know what? Let's embrace Caitlin Clark. Let's not shove her to the ground every single time she comes.
Well, the analogy, I think,
You
is
know,
Tiger Woods in golf.
Tiger Woods in golf. People didn't want to see him succeed. But let's be honest, Tiger Woods changed golf. There are many more golfers now, and people are interested in golf because of Tiger Woods. So I would, if I, you know, I mean, I shouldn't say, I don't know. Maybe I would resent her too, but I feel like she should be embraced more than resented.
Yeah, she's still dating the quarterback?
I don't know.
So
I have to look into that.
I know she did. I think she hung out with like, I think she was in a box though for like a Taylor Swift concert with like Travis Kelce. Like she's become like, she's a celebrity, right? You know, she gets this huge deal with Nike, and she gets the biggest contract for like the women's 3-on-3, the unrivaled basketball. Like there's all these things that she's gotten just for being Caitlin Clark. And I can understand, as someone who is in a contract world like you and I, like we all are, sometimes it's frustrating to see someone else that you think, well, I'm better than them and they've got all this success, but it's like, that's kind of just luck of the draw.
Jim
like, that's
says that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. I don't know.
Okay, let me say a couple things about this. I said that I spend much more time on TikTok than I should admit, but I do.
Wait, hold on. What?
There is every night. I can't. Well, don't.
Every night. He's over here every morning.
Okay.
Scrolling away,
Margery,
scrolling.
do you know who
I'm
Sophie?
reading our
Excuse
information.
me. Do you know who Sophie Cunningham is?
Nope.
I do.
Do you know who she is? The most common appearance, at least on my feed, is a player who's a teammate on the Fever, Sophie Cunningham, long blonde hair.
Yeah.
I think she's a little bit taller, who essentially is her defender, or at least she sees herself as Caitlin Clark as defender. When Caitlin Clark was bumped to the ground, and that was Sheldon, I think you said, who knocked her to the ground?
I think it was J.C. Sheldon.
Well, the person who on the other end of the court threw that player to the ground.
Well, wait, or was it the
Sophie
game?
Cunningham.
Was it the game?
Threw her to the ground
against the Sky. She's been thrown to the ground.
Whoever the hell
times.
it is.
Remember the hip check against
I
the
don't know.
Sky?
Who cares who it is? But the bottom line is there's this woman who is her defender, who is all over social media, who's become a big star. And the final thing I'll say, I've said this before, I don't think I have Googled an NBA highlight in a year or two. I Google WNBA highlights almost every single night. It's just, it's great. And maybe it is because it's older school, more traditional basketball in a lot of ways, a lot of passing, a lot of that kind of stuff.
It's more
But
fundamentally
great.
sound. Yeah.
Is anybody going to the Caitlin Clark game tonight? I'm curious. TD Garden? Nobody here can afford it, obviously. In any case, so tonight at the Garden, and you should watch Trenni, and she'll be broadcasting live from there.
6:00.
Fair enough. We're talking to Trenni Casey.
Okay, so let's talk about, this was a very upsetting story about what's going on in horse racing. I know we don't have that much horse racing around here, but a lot of the people that work with the horses, they walk the horses, clean the stalls, do the grunt work basically in the horse racing industry, are not in the country legally.
Yes.
So what's going on?
Well, like many other undocumented immigrants who are here, they live every day in fear. They live in fear. There was, I believe, at the end of June, a big ICE raid at a horse, like a horse breeding center, a horse track, a racing track, and a number of behind the scenes people were arrested and taken into ICE custody. And so that, in particular, sort of put this into overdrive where in the horse racing world, they've been using undocumented immigrants and documented immigrants, primarily from what I understand, Mexico and El Salvador, where many of these young men and young women have grown up on farms raising horses, so they know exactly what to do.
In their home countries.
In their home countries. And so they know how to groom them, how to wash them, how to tend to their wounds, make sure that they're eating properly, getting exercise. Somebody in the article referred to it as you wouldn't leave a newborn baby by itself, like in a stall, right? And that these horses are treated the same way. It's like 24/7 care. And many of the people who can do this to, the best are immigrants from Latin American countries. And now they are in horse, the issue here is, and I couldn't help but think this when I was reading it, and then I went and read some of the comments, and I think a lot of people felt the same way, which is these billionaire, multimillionaire owners of these horses, are you paying these individuals fair wages? So now, the crux of the article was, they're living in fear, they're afraid of being deported. This is something that props up the horse racing industry. And part of me thought, well, I don't feel bad for the owners of the horses. I feel bad for the people behind the scenes who are afraid of deportation because then they lose their lifeline. They lose their income source. But then I also was wondering, well, why are these mostly men so worried about losing this immigrant labor? And I'm like, well, of course you're probably worried about losing the immigrant labor because you probably pay them a fraction of what they are worth and what they deserve. Yeah. And so while I felt for these individuals, I also was angry, for the people in charge because I think what they're afraid of is that their overhead cost is going to go up. And yes, they're going to lose incredible labor, probably labor they can't find here because people don't have the skill set for it. But I'm also thinking to myself, well, yeah, it's going to cost you more, right?
Well,
so you like using undocumented immigrants because you can pay them. They're desperate for a job, and you can pay them what you want.
Well, that's probably true. However, this is there's no clear evidence. First of all, they should pay these people better. And secondly, it's not even clear to me we should have horse racing because a lot of people know much more than I think it's pretty cruel to these animals. But under the current reality, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you, the treatment of these people is absolutely unbelievable. They cite, on June 17th, there was a raid at Delta Downs.
That's what it is, Delta Downs.
Which is a track in Louisiana. A worker, I'm reading from the Washington Post, a worker is handcuffed face down in the dirt. They detained 84 people. Guess how many had criminal records? Because we know four. Four out of 84. 80 of them had no criminal records, and they're detained, they're grabbed by ICE. And by the way, we were off yesterday. The lead of yesterday's show, they discussed this new poll on immigration where a huge majority of Americans, including a growing number of Republicans, not only support immigration, but also oppose how Trump is handling this deportation thing.
It seems so obvious. I've just said this a million times. I think what people are mostly upset about is this influx every day over the southern border. Trump successfully has, in essence, shut down the southern border. He should have just done that and declared victory instead of pushing through this massive amount of money for ICE. over that we've talked about before, over the FBI and all these other agencies. I mean, they're spending a fortune on ICE.
Well, it's also the way, like, how can you, if you have any humanity, how can you watch these videos that emerge week in and week out? I'm not sure if you saw I saw one last week on Instagram where someone was pushed face first into the ground screaming, "I'm an American, I'm an American, I'm an American," but they were brown-skinned. And so they were presumed to be a quote-unquote illegal. I mean, you're seeing all these instances of people being snatched off the streets by essentially men in hoods and put into vans. I don't know how anybody can think that that is okay.
Well, did you watch CNN last night? Aaron Burnett had this baseball coach.
Oh, the guy from Harlem.
From Harlem in New York City, who stood between ICE and his players. Every one of his players was a citizen of the United States. Not playing baseball, and I think they'd moved to the basketball court, which was adjoining, and ICE shows up and start asking these kids questions. Now, why?
Who are your parents?
Right. Black and
live
brown
here?
skin.
Yeah.
Yet again, it's
well, that's what a court has said that is illegal. That you can't be arresting people based on their skin color or their job.
That was the LA thing. You mean
Yes.
the thing out of LA?
Yes,
yeah.
but we'll see. I mean, we seem to be getting. No one seems to be stopping this from happening.
No, if anything, it seems to be getting worse. I have not yet, although I was walking somewhere like a week or two ago and I saw there was like an ICE van and there were police around and I was like, oh boy. I'm like, what do I do if I see something happen? Because you can't interfere. I've read about it. You can use your phone and if you stay a safe distance, but you cannot interfere. If you physically interfere, you can be arrested. It's sort of a helpless feeling. But yeah, I mean.
By the way, this guy probably did interfere. In fact, he said last night, which was an odd thing for a person to say about themselves, he said, I was willing to die if that's what it took to make sure that these kids were not taken.
Coach.
He was pretty incredible character, I should say. In any case, we're talking to Trenni Casey. Can we go to a good news story?
Yes.
This is a guy about whom there's not much good news reported. I don't know what Deion Sanders, for those who don't know, is a football player who arguably is the greatest defensive back in the history of pro football. And years later, he goes on to become the coach of the University of Colorado. He's been in the news recently because his kid, who was the quarterback of the team, was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, much lower than people thought he was, in part because of the Sanders family thing. And there's a lot of animus, not good, directed at him. But then there's this wonderful story about him and a young disabled reporter.
Well, and what's amazing is this happened over a year ago.
I know.
And I think it's coming out again because this young man, whose of course his name is escaping me right now. I know you have it right in front of you.
It's okay.
But this young man was born with a neurological. Something it sounds a little bit similar to me to like a muscular dystrophy. So he's been confined to a wheelchair since he was 9 years old, but he has always had a dream of being a sports journalist.
Yeah.
And so while at the University of Central Florida,
Andrew Cherico
at the University of Central Florida, he kind of started covering the football team there and started covering the conference that Colorado is in. And so he made it to this like media day, and Colorado had this big game. I think it was actually a big game against UCF. I think that's why he was there.
Yeah.
And he had waited. He was so nervous, and he wanted to ask a question about, I believe, Colorado's defense and their ability to stop this really good running back for the University of Central Florida. So he asks the question, and then Deion starts to answer it, and then he stops and says, I just want to commend you for being here. He said when he had some sort of toes amputated. He was in a wheelchair for a short amount of time. Deion Sanders was, and he said it was so difficult to go through life for those couple of weeks in a wheelchair. So for you to go through life that way and still succeed and chase your dreams and goals, he said it's so incredible. And that was it. Then he answered the question and he went on. And then a year later, it kind of like quietly blew up. But this young man then got a bigger job with a University of Central Florida, like a fan page and a page that covers the team like on a consistent basis. And then he was back at conference media days, and he went and talked to Deion Sanders again. And Deion remembered him, and they had this really great exchange. But it just was it didn't get a lot of publicity at the time. And I think it only came up because they had a second interaction, and maybe more people saw it. But it was just a really kind, thoughtful, not seeking attention, not doing it for any other reason than just to commend someone for not allowing what seems like a hurdle keep them from chasing their dreams.
And it also, I love the fact that this young man went into the hurdles he faces.
Yes.
Talking about you have to worry. These are very manufactured. These wheelchairs are manufactured very carefully, and how you have to make sure that if you're on an airplane, that it's not going to be broken on the airplane. You have to pay extra money.
You know what you can't do on an airplane if you're in a wheelchair?
Get off.
Go to the bathroom.
Use the bathroom.
Yeah, you can't use the bathroom. That's another issue. I mean, he just talked about it, which I think a lot of us don't think about.
Yeah.
If we are not had this experience that Deion Sanders is, all the obstacles we put in the way of people who are in wheelchairs.
It's not just like the perception, too. I think a lot of people look at someone who is in a wheelchair or dealing with any kind of disability and think that they're not capable of doing what an able-bodied person is capable of doing. But I think what we forget about is that it's not just getting past those misperceptions, but also just like the actual physical act of having to get places, how much more difficult it is for those living with disabilities.
Okay, so before you go, once again, we mentioned this a few weeks ago. You covered tennis for the Olympics for
Wimbledon.
NBC. A couple of really young players won the singles championships in Wimbledon. But if you want to talk about that, that's fine. What I want to talk about, I was unaware of this, that in the oh, by the way, someone just DM'd me and said the only ticket tonight that is harder than Caitlin Clark at the TD Garden is Coldplay at Gillette. And I've just looked it up.
Yeah.
And even though there's 60,000 seats there, it is really
expensive. I've heard.
They're tonight and tomorrow night.
They don't tour very often. How expensive?
I'll pull it up again in a second. But the thing I was unaware of, there's a ball after, and the two singles champions at Wimbledon have to dance with each other.
It is kind of weird, right?
And
like
the weird
so
thing is,
old
when you
school?
see two young people who are among the greatest athletes on the planet, who can move in ways that you can't believe bodies can move, they can't dance.
They can't dance.
And
They're awkward.
It is really awkward. It's
But also,
exactly.
like, could
it's
you
really
imagine-
sweet in an odd way.
Could you imagine being like, hey, this isn't your partner, but I need you to slow dance like a wedding in front of everybody? Like you're
They do.
Like, and you're
They have their little
they have like
plaque or
sashes
whatever
on and
it is.
stuff,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's like
incredible.
this big, it's like this crazy ball. I kind of forgot about that. Like
Yeah, I
I
didn't
wrote,
even know
Who really knows how to slow dance anymore? I mean, the people that were like 100 years, be 100 years old today, they'll learn the foxtrot and all these dances and the waltz.
Apparently, you should learn it if you think
It's
you're
out
gonna
the
if you're going to win Wimbledon.
Yeah.
But yes, Iga Swiatek, who is
That's
very
how you say it?
Iga Swiatek. Yep,
Yeah.
the W is like pronounced like a V.
Whatever, okay, yeah.
She won Wimbledon the first time. She's kind of the queen of clay.
She
She's
beat
sort
the
of-
American 6-zip,
she beat-
6-zip.
It was. Did you watch that match?
No.
The Amanda Anisimova, I believe is how you say her last name. She's a young American. She's only 23. She's about to be 24 years old. She's about the same age as Iga Swiatek. Her post-match interview was gut-wrenching. She could barely get through it.
that's
She was so she was humiliated. She didn't get a single point.
Yeah.
She lost 6-love. It was like I looked when they kind of panned over. I was like, I said to my husband, I'm like, well, how long did that match even take? Like, it was 57 minutes. That's how quick
And she
that
beat
match
the
was.
number one player in the world in the semifinals.
She said that she ran out of gas, and she's young, right? She's never been in this position before. It's a lot of pressure. You know, the Duchess of Sussex, what is it? The Duchess of York, the Duchess
Whoever the
of
hell
Sussex,
she is.
whatever.
she is.
Kate, whatever,
Yeah.
Princess Kate, or whatever the heck her name is. She's
Princess
there.
Kate has a connection to our next guest, too, by the way. We'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead.
It just was like watching her, and she thanked her mom and everything her mom sacrificed for her. It was really, really lovely.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. I really wanted Carlos Alcaraz to win because Yannick Sinner was like, he
It's a men's
appealed it. That's who won the men's side. He appealed the PED use and won, but I don't know.
One last thing.
I'm a little suspect.
Two last things. Since you asked the question, Jamie looked this up on StubHub. The cheapest seat for Coldplay tonight is $360 for the worst seats at Gillette, which is almost in Revere. And the floor seats are $881. The other
That's
really
nothing,
nice
though,
thing
compared to Taylor Swift back in the day.
is that so?
Oh my God! When Taylor Swift was at Gillette, the up seats were like $1,100 to $1,700. The floor seats were
Why
going
don't
for
you
like
say
$10,000.
how much you spent for Boston Calling?
What I spent for Boston Calling?
Yeah, do you want to say?
I bought premium VIP
Okay, fine.
seats.
Can I
so
say
that
one
could
last
have
thing
free booze.
that I loved? Not only
It's not
did
free,
I
though,
love
when
the
you pay that
dancing
much.
thing, and you mentioned the press conference, the Wimbledon women's winner did, I can't pronounce her name.
Iga Swiatek.
Alcaraz and Sinner did these tributes to each other on the court. They were so beautiful for competitors in the political world, which is what we mostly talk about, where everybody hates each other.
Yeah.
these are the
they're
chief
actually-
competitors
yeah.
in the world, and it was a beautiful tribute
And it's
to
a
each
great,
of them.
it's a great rivalry. Like these are two guys who I think we've seen in like the last like 4 or 5,
22 and 23 years old,
yeah,
too.
championships. Like they are the next coming of the Federer, Nadal. Like Carlos Alcaraz is basically like the next Rafael Nadal, Spanish player, young, very, very talented. And Yannick Sinner is a Northern Italian.
One last thing, because I know nothing about Wimbledon, but really quickly.
Oh my God, you should go. It's
when they're
tremendous.
dancing, when they don't know how to dance, are they dancing in their tennis outfits? Or
No, they're in like ball gowns. It's like a formal.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know.
No, they don't make them like dance on the court. They're at like a fancy ball, like a fancy English thing.
So why wouldn't you like spend a half an hour learning how to do a foxtrot or something? You know,
Margery,
it kind of gets in the way probably of like working on your forehand or your backhand.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't you dance with Chris Gasper tonight at 6
I should ask him. I will.
I think you should do that.
I bet he's a good dancer.
I
That's
bet
what
he
I
is.
hear.
I bet he is.
Trenni Casey, it's great to see you.
guys.
All right,
Take
thank
care.
you. We were speaking with NBC Sports Trenni Casey, NBC Sports Boston Trenni Casey, I should say. Coming up after a quick break, a panel on innovation climate technology with Joe Curtatone for the Alliance of Climate Transition and Elmi Reichert of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. He's Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. This is BPR on 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow, Ken Casey, the lead of the Dropkick Murphys, with a spectacular new album about resistance. He'll zoom in, and we have a bunch of other people too. So even as the Trump administration doubles down on dirty, dated fossil fuels, Massachusetts companies are moving forward on the path to renewable energy and climate adaptation, thanks in part to tax incentives and state support for new climate technologies. Joining us now to talk about how Massachusetts is attempting to stand up against the headwinds from D.C., joined now by Emily Reichert. She's the CEO and Executive Director of Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. It's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Joe Curtatone, former mayor of Somerville, now the president of the Alliance for Climate Transition. Joe, it's great to see you too. Welcome.
Great to be back. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to talk to you both because my head just wants to explode all the time. And all these terrible floods in Texas, floods around here, all these terrible things going on, and we in the media hardly ever mention the link to climate change. You know, the moisture in the air, et cetera. So I'm so glad we're doing something here in Massachusetts. Explain, Emily, what is your organization, the Mass Clean Energy Center? What is it for people that don't know?
Happy to, and really
Could you
excited
move your
to be here
mic
today.
about an inch? Perfect.
There.
Perfect. Well, really happy to be here today.
Glad
I
to
love
have
your
you.
show.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks.
I had no idea that you stand up the whole time.
That's
We
right.
do.
That is,
and
that
you're
is-
going to do it too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Get
It's
over
very
it.
impressive. Very
Exactly.
impressive.
More energy when you stand up. That's
More
why.
energy,
Yes,
exactly.
more energy.
Well, the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is a quasi-state economic development agency, and our job is to grow clean energy companies and the clean energy sector and the climate tech sector here in Massachusetts. So what does that actually mean? That means we act as a bit of an innovation lab in climate for the entire state of Massachusetts. And how do we do that? Really 3 big ways. One is we support earlier stage companies through grants and investments. The second thing is supporting scaling companies by connecting them to all the partners they need to demonstrate their technology in Massachusetts. The second thing we do is help break down barriers to getting commercialized technology into homes, like EV chargers that could be within your street, your neighborhood, also heat pumps. The third thing that we do is support job creation. So lots of grants for training programs, everyone from very early junior high age kids, exposing them to clean energy careers, all the way to people maybe going back to a community college or an independent college in Massachusetts to learn clean energy skills. And if we got any teachers in the audience, we have a new clean energy and climate tech curriculum you can find on cleanenergycareers.org.
So while we're talking to Joe, can someone move the wire on Emily's thing so it doesn't drive me out of my mind? It's not your fault, by the way, at all. It's
a droopy microphone thing over
there. We go.
That's
okay,
what
great.
it is.
So Joe, we had Bill McKibben last week and others. We've been talking about the nightmare of essentially the gutting of the Inflation Reduction Act and the major investment in climate safety in the history of this country under Joe Biden, virtually all repealed. We've also talked to people like Mayor Wu and Governor Healy here about how while the state and city are going to try to step in where the feds are stepping out, even in the best of circumstances, there's only so much we can do. Correct or no?
Yeah, well, there's a lot we can do, but that doesn't come without a loss. Whether it's the complete elimination of programs that are advancing clean energy projects, or the rollback of environmental policies, or the delay of projects. We talked about these weather events, and you think that's the worst case scenario? No, the worst case scenario of tomorrow is determined by what we do and don't do today. It is cumulative. You can't just pick it up down the road. But it has been states and cities and city regions globally that it set the standard for the climate action movement. And there's been states like Massachusetts that are leading today. Emily's agency is the catalytic force of a forging climate economy here in the Northeast region.
We're already number one per capita in terms of climate tech startups,
Absolutely.
right? We are.
Right here. We
And
are at the
second
epicenter.
per capita in terms of investment.
We are.
Yeah.
So can I ask you a political question before we get back to what we're doing and hopefully some good news? You've spent most of your life in politics. I thought what the Biden administration did brilliantly is made sure that most of the infrastructure, for lack of a better expression, under the Inflation Reduction Act was in red states.
80% of it.
So that members of the Republican Party who represented those states would not be masochistic enough to vote to abolish the funding for good things and jobs in their state, yet they did. How do you
no profiles
is it
encouraged.
purely fear of Donald Trump? Or
That's what it is, right? It's fear to a cult. We knew that 80%, $10.8 billion went to red congressional districts. We have seen a renaissance in manufacturing in this nation. Versus 180 million in other districts. So, and then we've heard about a small but vocal cohort of Republican congressional folks in Congress who are going to push back and say we should take a scalpel to the IRA and not a sledgehammer. But at the end of the day, they cowardly, gave up. And so there's going to be some pain. But look, the overall trajectory of where we're heading as a nation in terms of forging this economy will not stop. But there are delays. And delays means consequences. Consequences not just, in terms of our environment, public health, as we all see more pollution, but also geopolitical influence. China knows this. China understands this is not about clean energy, but about power. So China controls 70% of the climate technology manufacturing capacity in the world, and they're going to wield it, and they are wielding it for influence, for global standards, and on technology. And that's where we're ceding ground.
So, Emily Reichert, give us some examples, tangible things of the kinds of things your operation is funding in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that we're funding in the community is there's an intern here today named Katie, who's with the Alliance for Climate Transition.
Hi, Katie.
We funded about 7,000 interns over the last 10 years, and these are folks who are getting access and experience in the clean energy industry.
What do they do? That's great.
So many different things. So anything from working for a nonprofit like Alliance for Climate Transition, to working at a climate company in the laboratory, inventing new things. And in terms of companies that we are supporting, I'd highlight Sublime Systems. That's a green cement company. They just signed a deal.
That's Holyoke? Is that where they are?
Yes, they are located in Somerville and Holyoke.
Sorry.
Come on, Jim. Cambridge just can't get over it.
Go ahead.
And they just signed a deal with Microsoft. Microsoft is pledging to buy 600,000 tons of this clean cement, both from their pilot production and their full-scale production. So that's a really exciting one. I would also highlight AeroShield. materials, they are developing very energy efficient windows. When you think about energy efficiency in windows, you think, okay, how many panes of glass do I need to have in there in order to make these windows more efficient? Well, this is a coating that's actually used by NASA called aerogels. And if you have this coating on the windows, you can very much reduce the amount of heat transfer through the windows, a lighter window, and a more energy efficient window. So those are two examples.
Great.
AeroShield is located in Waltham, and they recently opened their manufacturing facilities here.
That's the voice of Emily Reichert. She's the CEO and Executive Director of the Mass Clean Energy Center. Joe Curtatone is the President of the Alliance for Climate Transition.
And Emily, when you said before you're involved, in the chargers for the electric vehicles and those splits for the houses that are not the regular air conditioned, do people call you, or is this just how does this work?
Margery wants to know if she should call you. That's why she's asking the question,
Well,
Emily. Go ahead.
I would point you to a particular website that MassCEC has called Clean Energy Lives Here.
Okay.
So if you go there, you can learn about how to save energy and how to save money by installing all kinds of different clean energy innovations, including heat pumps.
Okay.
And understanding how an EV charger integrates with your home so that you can use and continue to adopt this technology that we all know is helping the planet and is also reducing energy costs.
And Joe Curtatone, what's going on with all these wind farms off of Cape Cod? I think one of them is far enough along that Trump can't shut it down, but the other one's not? Or
Well, I think you're not going to complain about that blade that came off where you go to the beach.
I am not.
You told us no problem. They just paid $10 million. They just paid $10 million.
They paid no, look, those projects are fine.
They are?
The Trump administration has put a full frontal assault on offshore wind for reasons that have been well documented that have no logical basis. The best way to describe it, if you're out of the ground or in that final stage in the ground, even the Empire Wind project that they attacked is moving forward. If you're at the early stages, there are still companies like who are thinking about offshore wind in the U.S., hoping they'll transcend an administration because there's a lot of runway before a project gets reviewed and approved. If you're in the middle, project that was approved and going towards and having received federal approval, whether you're at the state level, that's where things got mucked up. And that's where you're seeing a whole recalibration offshore wind. But it's important because offshore wind today represents 11% of the power generation in the United States.
And as Bill McKibben again said to us last week, it's not alternative energy anymore, it's cheaper energy, solar. But my recollection, we should have stepped back and talked about the commitment that the governor is talking about. She's talking about, we had Deval Patrick here, I don't know how many years ago, when he was talking about his life science initiative, and I know this is modeled, this climate thing that Healy is doing is modeled on this. From my recollection, I think, Emily, when I read this, was a huge percentage of the $1 billion or whatever it is, was to go to wind related technology. Am I not right about that? So if it turns out there'll be no future permitting and some in the middle, as Joe Curtatone said, are at risk, what do you do about that?
Well, this is something and an instance when we have to play the long game, right? We don't make policy based on what's happening with an administration in a 4-year period. This is a 10-year expenditure investment. So we, on an annual basis, will be reviewing where that investment goes, and we will do it in a responsible way, focused on where we can have the most impact in that particular year.
Is that, when you say long view, I hope I don't get this wrong. Well, Margery asked you about EVs before, and I'm the one with the electric vehicle, not Margery, and I have
a hybrid.
I have all the range anxiety concerns everybody else does. Am I not right that Maura Healey delayed by 2 years the EV goal, statutory goal, whatever it is, regulatory goal, to get us so you're not in agreement? Why do that? Why not just press ahead and continue to force the issue?
Well, I think we are pressing ahead on a lot of different fronts. And MassCEC's role is really about breaking down barriers to make sure we continue to adopt EVs as quickly as possible. So some recent programming that we have has funded 20 different communities to test out different ways to use EV chargers in the case you don't have a garage. I live in Arlington, I live up on a hill, and I don't have anywhere to park my car but the street. Where do I charge? That could be at a light pole. It could be different areas within a neighborhood. And so what we're doing is testing. How can we adopt EV if you live in an apartment or you don't have a garage? So that's some of the work that we're doing to make these numbers move faster.
You know, I also read, I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, 30% of the technology needs to reach our climate goals have yet to be invented. That was a pretty provocative thing. Explain what that meant, if I got it right. I think I
34%.
34%.
And the 34% is technologies that we're going to need to get to net zero globally.
Globally.
Yes, so there's a number of technologies that are still needed. There are big problems to solve. I mentioned specifically a company making green cement. We also have in Massachusetts a company making green steel. In those two manufacturing type operations alone put 20% of carbon emissions into the atmosphere.
Wow.
So if you can double down and tackle those problems, you're making a really big impact. And that's where I think Massachusetts actually has a really big role to play. We are the best at innovation. And so whenever we apply that innovative spirit and entrepreneurial spirit to these climate tech problems, we can make a real impact globally, not just locally.
You know, when I'm looking at you, I realized when I read about you a long time ago, you were at Greentown Labs before you did this. That's where
Joe and I know each other very well for many years.
I knew it was Somerville. You don't have to tell me. That is where, what's his name and what's her name? The prince and the whatever. Didn't they show up?
Prince William, Princess Kate.
Yeah, they did.
Emily and I gave them a tour.
Yeah. They talked to entrepreneurs, and it was quite a scene. But it was an honor to host them.
Did you get to meet them
in Somerville? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I got to hang out with them for
really?
like an hour.
So what do you call them when you're hanging out with them?
Your Royal Majesty. Your Royal Majesty.
Is that what you have to
so
say?
We gave them a tour. We were blessed to give them a tour of Greentown, and they wanted to learn about the very ecosystem you're describing here. Not just what happens within the world's largest clean tech incubator, climate tech incubator in Greentown Labs, but the ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem that Emily just mentioned. They came here to learn as part of the Earthshot Prize, learn all about that and how Massachusetts is leading.
So did you have to say, Kate, you didn't say Kate, obviously. What did you say, your Duchessness of Sussex or something like that?
I think actually I
still
avoided.
I still have the instructions.
Yeah.
In my phone.
What'd you do,
Oh, you got
Emily?
instructions.
I think I actually avoided, having to do bows or curtsies or anything like that. And they told us that was okay.
Yeah.
So, they wanted to have like a more relaxed demeanor around maybe entrepreneurs doing climate tech because they wanted to be there and they were excited about it.
Yeah, well, they're really, and the king is actually quite into the climate stuff.
He really is, yes.
Charles,
He knows
one of
a lot.
He's been talking to plants for years over there, right?
You say to plants?
Talking to plants.
To plants?
Yes.
What do you mean he's talking to plants?
He's a talk plant.
I think she means his fern or something.
Yeah, he talks to plants. He's always been a big plant guy, big nature
How's
guy.
that helping the environment?
He's
What's
helping
that doing about
plants
climate change?
to grow.
Okay.
They feel
Okay,
nurtured
good.
and understood.
Okay. Emily Reichert, this one really is for you. It sounds like it's full speed ahead, at least in Massachusetts. Isn't there fear on the part of investors and those who potentially seek investment funds that Trump is so hell-bent on destroying any entity that addresses climate change, that this is a risky proposition? I don't know if I articulated that well. You know what I mean? How are they dealing with that?
So far in Q1, climate tech investors are standing strong. So we have not seen the kind of Trump effect as of yet. And when you look at why it is that investors are interested in this, again, investors, while there may be shorter term needs or investment returns that they want to get, they're also looking at the long game, and they're looking at global markets. So when you look at who's partnering and who's investing in climate tech companies, it's not just the venture capitalists, it's actually companies sometimes from outside of the country who are saying, yes, we want this green cement, we want this green steel. And so you got to remember that this is a global market, and these technologies are needed globally.
So are we going to, you mentioned before China, Joe Curtatone, that is a big concern that we're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah, we're ceding influence. as I mentioned, and China gets this.
Yeah.
And so there are bigger geopolitical issues at stake here. And that's why what Massachusetts does has a bigger importance even beyond the Northeast region. It is seen as a global leader because of our innovation ecosystem. We are the innovative hub from life sciences to biotech and really the portal to the global climate economy. Emily helped build the largest climate tech incubator in the world, the Greentown Labs, and what is in Somerville and Houston, but really out of this area here because of our research universities, our talent, and our commitment from our public officials. And the talent in the universities, the other thing that's given us another catapult is what UMass is doing, I would say. What Marty Mann is putting all 5 campuses, positioning them to be a crucial link, leveraging the Mass Leads Act, that $1 billion investment by the Commonwealth in climate technology, Jim, like you mentioned, like we did in life sciences over the next decade, understanding the potential for collaboration between the public and private sector. So Massachusetts is going to play a global role beyond what we can imagine.
Hey, Emily, I want to get back to you. Before I do, though, here's King Charles
That's
and
right.
the Telegraph. I just come and talk to the plants, really. Very important to talk to them.
That's right.
They respond. That's
he
a
said,
little worrisome,
He said in
I have to
2010,
say.
I happily talk to plants and trees and listen to them. It's crucial. But then, while he was initially criticized, some recent reports suggest scientific research indicates plants may respond to sound, including human voices, and that talking to plants might encourage their growth. So la-di-da.
How much funding are you giving to people who talk to plants, Emily? How much of them? Okay,
Next time
before
I'm
you
bringing
go-
my friend with me, Jim.
I'm not sure that would make it through our scoring process.
We're getting a lot of texts about this the intern deal you were talking about, which I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know anything about. Ed Markey talked to us, maybe it was even at your event a couple of years ago, about the Civilian Climate Corps, obviously, which goes to nothing because of the federal cuts.
Well, wait. We're doing that in Massachusetts.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Essentially, it sounds like you're doing this thing. So, how do people apply? That's what they're asking. What are the qualifications you have to be part of this? How long do you serve? What's the deal?
Well, first of all,
And what's it called, by the way?
The Clean Energy Internship Program at MassCEC. So
Okay.
you can go to our website or you can just Google that. It will show up. It'll show up as, I believe, the top hit. I think I just searched it recently. So this program has been going, as I said, for 10 years. We've had 7,000 interns. They have worked in clean energy and climate tech companies across the Commonwealth. And it is probably one of our most popular programs because it is an opportunity for college students and students who are headed to college in Massachusetts to have the opportunity to be exposed to clean energy and climate tech careers by getting their hands dirty and actually working in those jobs.
How long do they serve?
They serve across the semester, so there's actually a spring semester, a summer, which we are in right now, and a fall semester.
That's fabulous.
I mean,
That's
how
really
exciting
fabulous.
is this? It's very you get very depressed thinking about our backing off climate change at the national level. So it's really exciting that we're doing all this stuff here in Massachusetts. Suppose J.D. Vance becomes the next president. Is he a climate change denier too?
I don't know, but I'm sure he is. He's not a champion.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask his plant and see
I mean,
what he says.
I think that is the thing that does scare people is that this is going to be a continuing thing if the Republicans are in charge because of the money from fossil fuels.
Yeah, well, I believe the American people are smarter than we all give them credit for, and I hope we understand that this is an economic argument, not just a response to an existential threat. And, this big, beautiful Bill Act that passed, is going to hurt people, and I hope people remember that pain and where it came from. That being said, we're going to, the fight for climate action isn't going to stop. The fight to build this new industrial revolution, green industrial revolution, will not resist. And I feel good about that. No matter who's the president, it'd be great to have a champion like we had the last administration, and we will get there.
That's a great end. I just want to caution people about this, talking at plants. An anonymous texter just weighed in and says, I play BPR for my plants. Unfortunately, they all died. So I guess you have to be careful what you say and who says it, I guess.
Yeah, we have a lot of talkers to plants online, Jim.
We're
You're
really
not, you're
glad
not
to meet
mentioning
you.
those.
Emily, come
what's the
back.
website?
Oh,
What's the
sorry.
website before you go for people who want to go and get more information?
MassCEC.com.
MassCEC. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
coming
both.
in.
That was
Thank you
great.
very
Thanks
much.
for having
It's a
us.
pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Joe Curtatone, President of the Alliance for Climate Transition, Emily Reichert, CEO and Executive Director of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And again, the website is MassCEC. Coming up after this quick break, It is time for our Two More Things segment. I'm Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Museum of Science, presenting the new exhibit, Perception Playground, which explores how your brain shapes your understanding of reality. Tickets at MOS.org. And the Boston Speaker Series, continuing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall with 7 evenings, featuring Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. bostonspeakers.org. And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing the full range of commercial and residential V-Lock skylight products. More information about their installation process and consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com. And the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum with Ming Fei, Edge of the Garden, a profound and playful exhibition filled with sculptures of oversized fruits and hybrid plants, opening June 26th. More at gardnermuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for our big, beautiful Two More Things segment. Margery, take it away.
Well, I would just, it's summertime, as we know, and you think of the fruit that's out in the summertime, watermelons, grapefruit, nectarines, grapefruit, peaches are out, grapefruit. They had a whole thing today in the New York Times about, maybe it was a couple of days ago, about how healthy peaches are, Jim. You know, we have
healthy peaches
how
are?
healthy peaches are. Yeah, they're
how healthy they are for you if you eat a peach.
That's right. If you eat a peach, like the famous album. Do you know why the Allman Brothers named Eat a Peach?
No, I had the album though many years ago.
Yeah, well, because Dwayne Allman ate lots of peaches in Georgia.
I did not know
Georgia
that.
Is the peach state. Did
I know
you know that?
I did know
but
that.
just for people that haven't really delved into the peach situation,
yeah, please.
They're really good for you. They're full of potassium. They're full of flavonoids and carotone. I don't know what any of those things are, but they're really good for memory and cognition, and they're full of water. And you don't want to peel them. You just want to clean them off very simply, and then you can eat them. And also you can grill them. A little oil over the peaches, Jim.
Wow, you'll be
and then,
doing that.
Yeah, they have all these recipes you can have for the summertime: skewered peaches and cherry tomatoes with marinated chicken in saffron, and you can put hard, unripe peaches, soften and turn savory when tossed with lime juice, salt, and minced chili. Excuse me. So anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to peaches because I am really into peaches.
That's really
myself. Remember this song
something.
Remember this song from a while ago from the Steve Miller Band?
No.
73 hit, The Joker. Remember this?
No.
Here it is.
I do. Oh, I do. Yeah, I do know this, yeah.
I think.
Wait. Excuse me?
I think he was talking about different peaches, but it kind of got a lot of people enthusiastic back in 73 about peaches, and I'm trying to do my part today to continue that enthusiasm.
So I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes about open streets and open Newbury. Mayor Wu announced in May to the public and here what the series was. You remember this started a bunch of years ago only on Newbury Street for a couple of Sundays. It's fabulous. They expanded it to other neighborhoods. I think Mayor Wu added Mattapan to the list of neighborhoods. And starting this past Sunday, for 10 weeks in a row, Newbury Street will be closed for 10 successive weeks. There are 2 points I wanted to make about this.
Why it happened. Yep, we all know.
That it's great.
Yep.
Pedestrians only, stores expanded in the street. The second reason, Margery may be right about this, I wanted to mention it because I always believe in giving people credit when they do good things. So let me ask you, Margery, since you're a student of political history, who is the person responsible for the open Newbury movement in Massachusetts?
It would be one Jim Browdy who harassed the previous mayor of Boston. It was Marty Walsh.
Marty Walsh, I did.
Until they opened the street, Newbury Street, and you deserve some congratulations.
Thank you.
Now it's spread around the city. Other places get open
I just said
different
that,
times.
yes. Now let me just say, talking about myself for another minute, if I can, not only did I harangue Marty Walsh every month about this, when the police commissioner, remember who he was?
Bill Evans.
Bill Evans.
Yes, we love Bill
Marty Walsh's
Evans.
police commissioner came on the show. He said that Marty Walsh told him that who?
Jim Browdy.
Jim Browdy harangued him about it. So Margery would like to take this opportunity. Go ahead, Margery.
I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you, Jim Browdy. You're a man of influence, principle, courage.
Who's responsible for open Newbury and open streets in Boston?
It would be Jim Browdy.
Thank you.
I don't think you've got why I was into peaches, but that's okay. You're into
because
open
you want
streets,
someone to shake your tree.
And I'm into peaches.
Like Steve. Is that not right?
Not today.
Not today.
Maybe next week.
Okay.
Okay. Up next after the 1 o'clock news. What are we doing after the 1 o'clock news?
John King.
John King. Thank you very much. Talking
Very
to John
good.
King
John
from
King.
CNN about everything that's going on down in Washington. He's Jim Browdy. I'm Margery Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio and 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, is next. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you're a GBH sustainer and you received a new bank or credit card in the mail recently, there's an easy way to update your information. Just visit gbh.org/update and keep your membership up to date. That's gbh.org/update.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. It's CNN's John King on a Putin pivot from Donald Trump. Plus, we'll get John's take on how MAGA America is reacting to Trump's dramatic about-face on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files.
I'm Margery Egan. Then we'll end our Tuesday with you, opening phone and text lines on all things punctuation. Does the use of a period in text messages signal the author is boiling with rage? Are exclamation points getting tired? Will the dreaded semicolon ever fully die? If you fret over punctuation and proper parentheses, the overused hyphen, or an N or an M dash, whatever the difference is, or an unnecessary ellipsis, now's your chance to make your voice heard. Call or text next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
brokered peace talks with Kyiv that have yielded humanitarian exchanges but made no progress towards a ceasefire. Peskov also noted Trump's threats to impose secondary sanctions and tariffs on Moscow in 50 days' time should Moscow fail to agree to a peace deal were directed at Russian President Vladimir Putin, adding it was up to Putin when and whether to respond. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
Officials in flood-stricken Kirk County, Texas, say they're planning to drain one or more lakes along the Guadalupe River in search of debris and human remains. More than 100 lives were lost to floods a couple weeks ago. NPR's Martin Costi has more from the town of Kerrville.
As the search and rescue effort in the Texas Hill Country transitions to recovery, attention is turning to what the July 4th flood may have buried in the small lakes formed by dams on the river. Ann Carr lives above Lake Ingram, and on Monday she told county commissioners about all the debris she saw flowing in.
We went out, we started seeing the lake rise, and as we did, we saw all kinds of things float by us. Propane tanks, kitchen appliances, you name it.
County commissioners say they're concerned about man-made hazards in the lake, as well as the effort to find more of the roughly 100 people still unaccounted for. They say there's a plan to drain one or more lakes, but they wouldn't give details. Martin Costi, NPR News.
Legal experts are looking at the how behind the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to clear the way for the U.S. Department of Education to proceed with mass layoffs and dismantling. Georgetown University law professor Steve Vladeck examined the High Court's emergency applications. Says since April 4th, yesterday's ruling was the 15th time the Supreme Court has put on hold lower court rulings that had blocked President Trump's initiatives.
These were rare, that we would only get a handful of these kinds of rulings every term. We've seen a remarkable and unprecedented uptick in the volume since President Trump came to office in January and since many of his actions ran into trouble in the lower courts.
Professor Stephen Vladeck on NPR's Morning Edition. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 375 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The mayor of Fall River is criticizing his city's firefighters union for raising concerns about department staffing levels after Sunday night's deadly fire at an assisted living facility. 9 residents of Gabriel House died in the fire. Firefighters and union leaders who were on the scene held a news conference yesterday claiming that lives could have been saved if staffing was what they consider adequate. Mayor Paul Coogan tells GBH's Boston Public Radio that, in his view, the timing of that criticism is inappropriate.
I am kind of a little taken back that, less than 24 hours after a tragedy, politics enters into the equation. It just had no place.
Meantime, officials say that all of the residents displaced by that fire have now been housed. Harvard University has announced it's extending its hiring freeze that was enacted earlier this year, and in doing so, the university says cuts from the Trump administration are expected to cost the school about $1 billion a year. In an email sent to staff yesterday, obtained by Mass Live, Harvard administrators listed federal actions that have hit Harvard's bottom line. They include canceled research grants and contracts, reductions to the budgets of the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health, and the threat of ending Harvard's ability to accept foreign students. Email also says that President Trump's passage of his so-called Big Beautiful Bill dramatically increased attacks on income from Harvard's endowment. 88 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Margery Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live. Thank you very much from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention that tomorrow we're going to be joined at the Boston Public, well, not going to be joined, it's going to be Zooming in, but Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys. They got this new album out, all about resistance, and we're going to talk to him about that tomorrow. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Margery. Joined on Zoom by the pride of Dorchester, CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project all over the map. Hey, John King.
But he has no musical ability, so you'll have to wait for Dropkick Murphys tomorrow for any music. But
I know.
I can help you with just about anything else.
Well, that's okay. You can't do everything. You can't do every single solitary thing, John. But you can fill us in on what's going on with all this hoopla about Jeffrey Epstein. People may know as all reports believe, took his own life in prison after he was in prison for basically trafficking young women. There was supposed to be this list. So tell us about the excitement about this list, the disappointment when there seemed to be less than people thought. What's going on?
Well, it's really a fascinating question. Number one, there's no question that loud voices in Trump's echo chamber, the Steve Bannons, the Laura Loomers, the Charlie Kirks, people who've helped support Trump out there, are upset because they thought there was this great secret file. Their whole premise is based on, the government is corrupt and the Democrats have had a pedophilia ring and this, that, and the other thing, and they've been hiding secrets and burying evidence. And then the Trump Justice Department says by the way, there's no such file. My question, number one, is does this trickle out to Trump voters out in America, who I know from my travels actually raise these questions, but are they transactional questions? Do they say, Mr. President, you promised us something, now you can't deliver? That's part of it. Is it just the loud people who get on, in the media ecosystem, or does it translate out into the country? But I do think there's a bigger question here, and I'll just put it this way: live by the conspiracy theory, die by the conspiracy theory. Donald Trump came to national prominence as a presidential candidate by saying Barack Obama was an illegitimate president, right? It reignited the birther conspiracy, which was a farce and a fraud and a disservice and disrespectful and racist. And guess what? Not true. Barack Obama was, born. He's an American citizen. He served 2 terms as president. There have been so many of these over time, right, where Trump just, elections are rigged. And then when you call it out, he moves on to something else. It's a snake oil salesman operation. And the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing was another one, that there's a secret file and the Democrats are hiding it from you. And now his own attorney general says, well, there's actually no list. There's no secret files. We've given you everything that we have. So my question is, how many times can you have a conspiracy theory just collapse under the evidence of fact and truth and reality? And at what point do people, hold him accountable? That's my question. Is there a point where people say, well, this isn't the first one of these. There's actually been quite a few of these. And guess what? None of them have turned out to be true. So that's my bigger political question. Is there a price down the road? But it certainly has turned up a lot of volume on people who are usually saying, Donald Trump walks on water, Donald Trump can do no wrong, or saying Donald Trump and his team have let them down in a big way.
Yeah, I have a couple of things, John, on this. Did you say a second ago that in your travels, real people are actually, or have actually, spoken about Epstein in the files?
Yeah, I'm not saying they lead with it, Jim. I'm saying when you ask them, it's like when I go out and do these Trump voters, you see the little pieces on TV, but
Sure.
I'll spend an hour or 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, just shooting the breeze with them, trying to get to know them, to understand their disaffection. And a lot of them do think, because they have been told this. They have been told this for years by Fox News and OAN, and now the podcasts and the Joe Rogans and the Charlie Kirks, that there's this secret society out there, and that the Clintons and the Obamas and the Soroses and everyone's been out to get you and screw you, and they're living the high life and they're cheating the system and they're hiding all the evidence. Whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or any number of examples, the Comet ping pong place here in D.C., they've been told these things for years.
By the way,
so a lot of them believe there might be something to it.
Before I ask my last Epstein question, for Comet Ping Pong Pizza, Margery and I went there a couple of inauguration cycles ago. That was the place where the guy in a crowded pizza joint shot a weapon. Luckily didn't kill anybody. It was because the allegation by the Trump people was there was a child sex ring happening in the basement by Hillary Clinton and I think John Podesta, her campaign manager. So it's been going on a long time. The thing that I want to add to your discussion, John, and I know you won't make this conclusion, but I will, he really does protest too much, Trump. We have all seen the visuals and the sound, including on CNN, of him interrupting a question to Pam Bondi in the cabinet room about a week ago, saying, nobody cares about this. Why is anybody talking about this? Nobody cares about this. He then does this long post on Truth Social saying that MAGA people should all come together. Forget this. The headline right now on your station, sources, Trump privately urging aides to let Epstein story die down. It seems to me, again, just common sense, that unless there's something that makes Donald Trump nervous, he just let the stuff be released and move on. Is that an unreasonable conclusion to reach?
I think it's a completely fair conclusion. The one thing Donald Trump has always been able to rely on is his base. He grows a little bit, he shrinks a little bit, but he's always kept that hardcore base. And this is something that is causing at least some verbal cracks in that base. And again, does it get from the Bannons and the Loomers out into the Chris Mudds, one of my Iowa Trump voters, and the Andrew Konchaks, a New Hampshire fisherman, who's a Trump voter? Does it get to them? Do they start to think, well, wait a minute, if they were lying to us about this or BSing us about this, what about that and the other thing and this and that, right? That's my question, right? Jeffrey, I don't care about Jeffrey Epstein, and I don't mean that in the harsh way. I don't mean that the way that sounds. It's not going to, affect the price of living. It's not going to affect what you pay at the grocery store. But it's part of a deep portfolio of conspiracy theory that Trump has used as currency to say, trust nobody but me. They're all out to get you. There's this deep state. And so that's my question. Is there an impact to it? But yes, when you see him trying to shut this down and then trying to tell his allies out there, this is not good for us. Look, we're about to hit the 6-month mark of Trump 2.0. His approval rating is down from Inauguration Day. Dissatisfaction about the direction of the country is down from Inauguration Day. Manufacturing employment is down from Inauguration Day. Inflation is about flat, maybe down a little bit, but not down a lot since Inauguration Day. The price of gas is about the same. If Republicans look at those metrics and say, what is next year going to be like for us? And so Donald Trump likes to constantly change the subject so that we don't focus on sometimes things that are negative for him. This would be one of them within his own base. But what I try to do, Jim, is not get caught up in the day-to-day Washington stuff, as you know. And if you step back at this 6-month mark, the metrics are not good for him. They're not horrible, but they're not good. The line is at best flat, if not going down a little bit. And if you are Republicans and you're watching the Trump show, and Jeffrey Epstein is now the latest act at center stage in the Trump show next year, and you remember 2018, and you remember this point in 2017 when the Trump show was doing its thing, and you were going home every weekend and hearing people saying, we're not happy. Where's the progress? What's going on? So Republicans are nervous, and I think it's a long way of getting back to your point. I think Trump himself is trying to shut this down because he sees it's potentially harmful, because they already have trouble with the middle of the electorate heading into the midterm cycle. If they have trouble with their own base or dissidents in their own base, that's going to make it a whole lot worse.
Talking to John King from CNN.
Well, out in Texas, of course, where we had the terrible flooding and terrible loss of life. CNN has done great reporting. The New York Times done great reporting about the efforts in some of those communities to get a siren system, to have a more efficient way to notify people. Also, criticism that the people that used to work for the National Weather Service that might have been crucial in flood response took buyouts with the cutbacks of the federal government. So where does this end up?
I think that to be cautious, we'll know more in 3 and 6 months about the particular point you just made at the end there about did these layoffs, did DOGE, did the other cutbacks or threatened cutbacks. A lot of people feel threats of cutbacks and they're looking for other jobs because they think they're about to lose their job. It's not just people who lose their jobs. There's been a psychological impact across the federal government in these healthcare agencies, in the education department now, and in places like FEMA, where you have Donald Trump and Kristi Noem constantly saying we're going to get rid of it. Well, if you have a job there, you're going to start looking around, right? Because you think you're about to lose your job. So I think we need to be careful and let the accountability people do their job, including great reporting. And you're right, we have great teams there. Other people have great teams there. I think there's no question there are going to be conversations about, how much is the state responsibility? Shouldn't there be more sirens? How quickly do people act? There's a story I read today about the camp director getting a warning and then it taking about an hour to impact, an evacuation. I don't run a camp, and I don't run evacuation. So is that good or is that bad? Should it have been faster? Let's leave that to the experts. I will tell you, though, that even Trump, to Jim's point about Trump changes his tune and what does he mean when he does, even he has changed his tune about FEMA since this.
Yeah.
And I was this is a sad coincidence, I guess, or a sad irony. I just decided to go back to these small towns in western North Carolina before the Texas thing was happening. And I'll tell you, the people there, they're frustrated with FEMA. They didn't have maybe a perfect experience with FEMA. They think that FEMA could be streamlined. They think it could be more user-friendly. They think it can have be more modernized. But Democrats and Republicans there were like, do not get rid of FEMA. We need FEMA. Make it better, but we need it. And I do think that, sadly, sometimes it takes horrific things like North Carolina late last year and now Texas again to get us to drop the politics and start, or at least minimize the politics and start having more pragmatic conversations about who does what at terrible times on the days and the weeks that you hope never happen. They do happen, and these, forgive me for the hoax people out there, these climate-related things are happening more often. So I do think it's going to change the FEMA conversation. There are already a lot of governors and a lot of Republicans in Congress saying no, please no to that. But as we know, often afraid to speak up publicly. I think Trump has changed his tune too, and we'll watch where that debate goes as we wait for more accountability in Texas.
Well, can I play a little sound?
Play the sound.
This is a clip from what John was just referencing, latest edition of All Over the Map series, checking in with North Carolinians 9 months after that, obviously the devastating Hurricane Helene. Here it is.
This is Corey Hampton's office, her source of income and of joy.
Woo!
But seeing the French Broad River is much more complicated now. The floodwaters 9 months ago changed everything.
We pulled people out of second-story windows.
before had been calmer even than it is today. Yeah, I mean, I watched whole houses come down this river.
You know, John, Democratic leadership in North Carolina, Republican leadership in Texas, believing in climate change in North Carolina, on the governor's office, not believing it, and in Texas. Were you able, from what you've seen happening in Texas and from your personal experience in North Carolina, do you see a different response from the state governments to the crises in their communities, or do you not?
Well, I think you see different long-term rhetoric about them be willing to concede that this is part of a conversation we have to have about, I think sometimes in politics, if you say it used to be climate change or climate crisis, a lot of Republicans want to leave the conversation, right? Because their president tells them it's a hoax. Or they think the Green New Deal is too much government power and too liberal. Well, that's fine. If you want to come to the table and say we think the federal government wants too much power over this, great. What would you do? That's the conversation the country has to have. And so if you're the people who live in the Texas highlands who saw this, if you're farmers I met all over the country last year who are Republicans, if you're Andrew Konchak, my friend in New Hampshire there, who's a Trump voter and a commercial fisherman, these are Republicans who will tell you there's a climate crisis. They might use different language because they're afraid of offending their political friends who want to say hoax, but they work the land, or they work the water, or they run these camps, or they live in these. Listen, where I was in Western North Carolina, it is 500 miles to the Atlantic Ocean, and more than 500 miles to the Gulf of Mexico. Forgive me for saying that. Gulf of America, whatever you want to call it. But to the Panhandle in Florida, where the ocean comes ashore, right? Not a place on a list where you would say, we're at risk of getting hit with a hurricane, right? Not a place on a list. And yet, look what happened. Yeah. The hurricane came, but then because there's a great story in the Boston Globe about this today. Because of the change in the climate, there's so much more moisture trapped in the air. They're already in the air. And then the rivers get higher from a hurricane or heavy rains, and then the hurricane forces come and they suck it up. So these things are more extreme. You cannot deny that. And so, do we have to find a way to break the vocabulary of that debate to get people to talk about it? But again, I'm rambling because I get pretty passionate about this one because I use my eyes, right? I go to these places. I've been traveling the country for 40 years, and you go to places that are just different. And there's more rain, or there's less rain, or there's cycles of more and less, or hurricanes are hitting and flooding Western North Carolina. The people there want to have a realistic conversation, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, about what the hell is happening and why their communities are so different. It is the politicians who are stuck in their rigid lines, say, oh my God, I can't acknowledge there's a climate crisis. That's ridiculous. Just look around you. There is one. You want to have a healthy debate about who should take the lead or where the money should come from? Great. But my son, who's a scientist who lives up where you guys is, his argument is it's too late. Or at least on a lot of these things, it's too late.
Well, it is. Bill McKibben says that too.
Yeah, right. So I'm not smart enough to know that. My son's a hell of a lot smarter than I am. But my point to him is don't give up. Let's try to start conversations about doing something to help, to mitigate. And in these communities, Jim and Margery, Democrats, Republicans, the thing that I came away just inspired by the people of Western North Carolina is nobody gives a damn who they voted for. Nobody gives a damn whether that's a Democrat or Republican who owns that business. They came out and they shoveled their towns out from under mud. They want help, they deserve help, but they're not waiting for it. They're putting their lives back together, and they're inspiring, and I wish their politicians would have that kind of courage and character.
But you know something, John, it drives me insane because the president came out and said, well, this is a 500-year storm or a 1,000-year storm, which is a lie. That's not true anymore because of climate change, changing the dynamic. But he gets on and says that, and then we in the media almost never mention climate change when we're talking about these tragedies. I mean, we talk about who didn't call whom and who wasn't there and why was it 1 o'clock in the morning and why was it 4, and that's all important. But it's this notion that this was an aberration that never happens again, and let's hope it doesn't happen again, but it could happen again because of climate change, and it's a bigger picture. And when you look at the stories and hear the stories, you must have noticed it, we rarely call it related to climate change. And why don't we say that more often?
So I'm gonna use myself as an example. I was just very passionate about this because I am, and because I try to listen. In my old age, I try to listen to my children, and this is my son says, has my generation blew this and blew it for him, and you know what, he's right to a degree. So I got very passionate there. I think to your point, in our business, because there's so much suspicion and mistrust of us out there, we have to try to be a little less passionate and just be fact-based and say, to your point, Bill Nye, the science guy, was on our air the other day, and I was watching.
Saw him. He was great.
Yeah, and he was talking about how, when I first moved into my house, I live right above the Potomac River. I moved into my house a dozen years ago, and twice in like a month, we had 500-year rains. Well, wait a minute. How can you twice in a month have 500-year rains?
Yeah.
Right? And so that was the point Bill Nye was making, and the point you're making, Margery, is that our language is useless now, because we used to have this standard that, this only happens every 100 years or every 500 years, and yet it's happening sometimes 2 and 3 times in a year or within a year or two. So maybe we shouldn't use climate crisis. I'm not saying to run from that. We cannot run from reality. At the same time, we have to broaden the conversation and say to people, okay, maybe you don't think it's climate change. Maybe you're inclined to believe that's a hoax. Well, then help me. You live there. This has happened to you now twice in the last year, or this just happened to you last week, and it hasn't happened in forever, or it was more wet, it was more cold, it was more devastating, it was more extreme. We have to deal with it, right? Whatever we want to call it, if you don't want to accept the language because Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton used those terms or whatever, or CNN used those terms, or Jim and Margery used those terms, we have to have a conversation about what's happening. And if we have to bend our lexicon a little bit to bring more people to the table, somebody help me do that.
John, while I agree completely with Margery's analysis of how most of the media employs or doesn't climate change. What's the name? Your climate reporter at CNN did a fabulous package the other night out of Texas. What's his name?
Bill Ware.
Bill Ware. It was. If people haven't seen it, it is, and it hits it head on. It's really great. So,
and by the way, I shouldn't say it's too late. I mean, we're saying it's too late. What people have said is that we're too late to avert the worst. But if we stop, we can avert, a total disaster.
Fight to the end.
Yeah.
So, John, we know that Donald Trump is flipped again on Ukraine, this time in the right direction, criticizing Putin, even though he just said in an interview with BBC he's not going to forsake them. He's not done with him. But apparently being willing to sell United States arms to NATO countries who will then provide them for Ukraine. I know it's impossible to see if there's going to be, what's the line, the taco moment. Trump always chickens out. From afar, does this seem to be an all-in from Trump in this thing, or is a flattering phone call from Vladimir Putin flip him yet again?
Well, I think it would take more than one, but you raised the legitimate point. I'm a little flippant there about something that's life or death in a global crisis. A lot of people who have been wanting to support Ukraine from the very beginning are saying, like, I don't care why he got there, I'm glad he's there, right? So you'll have more U.S. weapons going, including potentially defensive Patriot missile systems going into Ukraine to help them in this fight. And you do see Trump is annoyed with Putin because, as Trump has said, I'm paraphrasing, but Putin keeps saying nice things on phone calls and then launching all sorts of drones and missiles at Ukraine. So now he says he's got 50 days, Putin does, Trump says, to end this war, or else there's coming more tariffs or more treatment. And we don't do a lot of trade with Russia, so tariffs on the one hand, direct tariffs against Russia is kind of almost a blank threat. But there are other countries that you could, anyone else who does business with, it's potentially a weapon. Does he mean it? Jim, you raised the key point. Trump is intellectually inconsistent or policy inconsistent on a whole lot of things. Ukraine now among them. He's in a place that the old Republican Party, the party of standing with democracies and against the communists and the aggressors, is happy with. And so how long does it last? I think you raise an excellent question. And so I think we see this clock he raises with Putin, and to see whether whether the Russian leadership decides to your point, to try to make nice, to try to do something positive, to see if they can win him back. Again, Trump often says he'll solve these in 2 weeks. And he said some things back to the first term that he would solve in 2 weeks that we still haven't gotten to yet. So I don't know if 50 days means anything, but I think we do have a month, maybe 2 months ahead of us where this is going to be a defining question of, will he swing back and forth, or has he finally decided? Guess what? Putin's lying to him. Putin keeps saying he's going to do things and he refuses to do them. Or Putin says he's interested in peace in Ukraine, but of course he's not. He's interested in something else. So we'll see.
We're talking to John King.
So, John King, I wanted to talk to you for a minute about David Gergen, the great political aide to four different presidents and great commentator. His daughter is frequently with us, Catherine Gergen Barnett, who's a physician internist over at Boston Medical Center, one of the great hospitals here in Boston. He just passed away a few days ago, and he was a man who spanned Republicans and Democrats. Tell us about him. I think he was unusual.
A couple of things. He was unusual. The first thing I want to say about him was he was a gentleman of extraordinary grace and manners, no matter what he did. When I switched from print, I was an AP Wire guy, and I switched to television. David, switched from, he was a U.S. News and World Report guy when I first met him as a columnist, and then he was in and out of government over these periods of time. Then I was covering Bill Clinton, and he went into the Clinton White House. David was always very supportive to me about my switch and about hanging in there and about how things are rough. He was someone I had to pick up the phone and call every day when he was at the Clinton White House. Then he went on, of course. He had a passion for mentoring young people. He did that in every administration he worked in. And then he did it at Harvard, obviously, at the Kennedy School for quite some time. And he did it when he wandered the halls here. He was like Abraham Lincoln. David was not a small person. Yeah, he was not a small person. And that presence, I think, gave him stature before you actually had a conversation with him. And then he had even more stature and more gravitas because he was so graceful and patient and kind and incredibly smart. But I put the incredibly smart down low because to the point we were just having about the climate, Jim, that you're more willing to have a conversation with somebody when you feel welcome and you feel friendly and you feel like even though you know that person is so much smarter than you, they're treating you as an equal and they're listening. And David was like that. I put my glasses on. I was going down on my phone because I don't know if anyone's going to be able to see this, but a couple of years ago, I took my young guy to a Patriots game.
Oh my gosh!
That's a great picture.
Great
and David
picture.
Was there.
Great
and David
picture.
was there, and he was way down the other end of the field, and he saw me, and he came over, and he kind of said hello to me, and then he was just rubbing Jonah's head, and he was just, it's like, great, thank you for bringing that cute kid, and he was just hanging out with my son, but he was just so gracious to him, and he was enormously impactful. There was it was interesting when he came into the Clinton administration, a lot of the Clinton people, the Democrats, the hardcore Democrats, were not happy that Bill Clinton brought him in. He didn't stay very long in that administration, but he gave it a time of stability, and Bill Clinton liked having an adult around sort of for a different opinion. Bill Clinton, we talk about Donald Trump and his base. Bill Clinton would often go outside the White House and talk to his friends from Arkansas and talk to other people, and it would drive his staff crazy. So David came in with sort of eggshells under his feet, but he was a stabilizing force in that administration back in the day. But I would just, as someone who has watched him walk these halls and know people from the Kennedy School, there are generations, plural now, of people he has mentored. And at a time when our politics, forgive my language, sucks and is fractured and is mistrustful and distrustful, I would hope that everybody who's sad at this news, and there are a lot of people sad at this news, that those young people remember and bring that grace and the class and the dignity and the respect into their conversations, because we need to rebuild from this polarized, fractured mess we're in. And David was a spectacular example of how to do that in a very bipartisan way.
Couldn't agree more. John King, it's good to see you as always. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you for that lovely remembrance of David Gergen.
Can I add one more thing about David? You mentioned that Catherine, his daughter, Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett's with us every couple of weeks. We had David on the show a number of times. He was on television with me a lot of times. My favorite encounter with him is I did an interview with David and Catherine, father and daughter, on Greater Boston. I tweeted it out a few days ago. I'd go check it out if I were you. It was beautiful. Not only two really big, caring brains and wonderful people, but the relationship comes through beautifully too. You should check it out on my Twitter account.
Thanks, Jim. We have been speaking with John King, CNN Chief National Correspondent. Well, because to point that out to people, because he was a wonderful guy, and she's a wonderful, caring.
They're both great.
She's a wonderful physician too. I mean, wouldn't you love her to be your physician? I think you might.
She sort of is. I call her fairly regularly.
She's one of Jim's 7 physicians
one of my
on
many
speed dial.
Yes.
Okay, we've been speaking with John King, CNN's Chief National Correspondent, and he does this great reporting project, which we touched on a little bit all over the map. Coming up after a quick break, We're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on
I'm so into this.
punctuation. That's right, Jim. This was Jim's idea.
It was.
So, if it goes well, then good. If not, blame Jim. The good and the bad of punctuation, the AI of punctuation. Why won't the semicolon go away? What other pronunciations, things just drives you nuts? I'm Margery Egan, here's Jim Browdy. This is BPR on 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Weight loss drugs have surged in popularity, but insurers are rethinking coverage. I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, I'll talk with an endocrinologist about what this means for patients. We'll take a look into claims that the Fall River Fire Department is understaffed following Sunday night's deadly fire. And a new book explores how the CIA is trying to reimagine the art of espionage. It's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Cornerstone at Canton, an assisted living community with services designed to help seniors age in place, offering respite and trial stay options to help during recovery or when exploring new living arrangements. More at cornerstonecanton.com. And M&M Skylights, offering the full range of Velux skylight products, installation and maintenance services to customers from Boston to Portland and surrounding areas. More information at mmskylights.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Margery Egan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. We're ending the show with a very BPR kind of call-in segment. Tell us your favorite and least favorite punctuation marks. We bring this topic to you courtesy of a wonderful column in the Washington Post recently about the semicolon. Quote, too demure to be a colon, but more assertive than a comma, Mark Laswell writes. Its purpose is to insert, quote, a graceful pause between two related clauses, which I did not know, by the way, as in, he writes, RFK Jr. came to my house, semicolon. He tore out the medicine cabinet with a crowbar. So why not just use a period? Where does the semicolon, what does it say about you? And beyond the semicolon, what other punctuation is it that drives you up a wall, either its use or misuse? What about AI's supposed takeover of M- and the preferred clause disruptor of Edgar Allan Poe? Was he just AI? After all, punctuation in you, whatever moves you, at 877-301-8970. Now, before you criticize me, I will admit I used an exclamation mark far, far too much. You know what F. Scott Fitzgerald said about an exclamation mark?
Was like laughing at your own joke.
Like laughing at your own joke. I have never used a semicolon in my whole life, by the way, ever, because I don't know how to use it. I use a dash instead, like Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you. And the thing that I use most regularly, which I don't know if it's in the story, I use an ellipsis in all of my writing, as you know, texts, emails, whatever I write. 3 dots, just to separate thoughts. Oh, she's about to mock me.
No, I'm just thinking ellipsis man.
What's that?
Ellipsis man.
I am ellipsis man. I know I shouldn't mention that because we read the same article, whatever that means. 877-301-8970. So we want to know your most favorite punctuation mark and the punctuation mark that you wish would go away, either because you hate it, like a lot of people hate exclamation marks, or because you simply don't know how to use it, like me and the semicolon. Do you want to weigh in on your favorite and least favorite?
Well, I used to use semicolons a lot when because if you say the farm had like cats, dogs, comma, dog, pigs, then you'd use a semicolon if you went on, and also a restaurant and a beauty salon. You know what I mean? It's like the lists. It's used it with lists. That's where I used it a lot. Yeah.
You did?
See what I mean?
No. So, secondly, do you use it now or do you not? I've never seen a semicolon or anything you've written.
Well, I haven't written anything in a while.
You write me a note every once in a while?
No, I don't usually use semicolons in my notes. I am annoyed by, well, I'm not annoyed. I always weigh when you're texting people.
Yeah.
Is this worth an exclamation point or is it not worth an exclamation point? I mean, you don't want to go overboard on the exclamation points because it drives people crazy. But we have a little sound from Seinfeld about the exclamation point. Yeah, which I thought was pretty good. This is Elaine in season 5. She's Elaine's boyfriend writes down her voice messages, including one from a friend announcing that she had a baby. And Elaine is all upset that he didn't use an exclamation point about the baby. Here it is.
You don't think that someone having a baby warrants an exclamation point?
Hey, look, I just jotted down the message. I didn't know that I was required to capture the mood of each caller.
I just thought that you'd be a little more excited about a friend of mine having a baby.
Okay, I'm excited. I just don't happen to like exclamation points.
Well, you know, Jake, you should learn to use them. Like the way I'm talking right now, I would put exclamation points at the ends of all of these sentences. On this one and on that one.
I am totally with her. 877-301-8970. Can I say something else that I have, I don't know if I've pioneered, but I'm trying to advance. I don't like apostrophes either.
Oh,
and
what's wrong with apostrophes?
I just don't, they don't make me feel good. And so what I do.
So you go don't, D-O-N-T with no apostrophe?
D-O-N-T, yeah. Why do we need to write D-O-N apostrophe T? Explain that to me.
Because there's a O missing. It takes the place of the O.
I understand.
Did not.
If I wrote D-O-N-T, do you know what I'm talking about?
TNT?
If I wrote D-O-N-T with no apostrophe, do you know what I'm talking about or not?
I would think you just made an error in your typing.
Okay, what if I said Margery's hybrid vehicle, and I didn't have the apostrophe after the Y in Margery and just went right to the S? What would you think about that?
I would think the same thing. I would think you're being lazy or you didn't know that you're supposed to have an apostrophe.
Okay, fine.
I think apostrophes, you don't think apostrophes matter?
I think they don't matter, actually.
Well,
and I think not only do they not matter, they upset me. 877-301-8970. Let's start with Debbie in Taunton. You're first on BPR. Welcome to the show, Debbie. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Go ahead. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
My friend and I are retired elementary school teachers.
Uh-oh.
And we have made ourselves the apostrophe police.
Bless you.
And we wish that we could walk around with white out so we could get rid of all those omelette apostrophe S and dog groomers apostrophe S and teach them the right way.
Okay, Debbie, why have elementary schools stopped teaching grammar?
Oh, my God. Here she goes. Go ahead.
That's what I want to know.
Well, I've been retired now for 14 years, so you can't blame me, but we tried. And it's funny, I had a student teacher. I said, apostrophes are only used for contractions and ownership, and that's it. And she said, I never realized that.
Can I tell you, you're a woman of principle, Debbie. Thank you for your call and your service. We really appreciate it. You see the note that Zoe wrote to us, by the way?
Your notes are notoriously grammatically correct.
She didn't say your notes. Did you notice that? Even though we all read the same article, I assume. So shouldn't.
I'm devastated.
877-301-8970 is the number. Why could you not use I used, instead of a semicolon, like in that example you talked about a few minutes ago, I use a dash, a hyphen. Why can't I use a hyphen rather than a semicolon?
Because it's not the same thing.
I know it's not the same thing.
In a list, you know, the RFK example you gave, it's like they're two complete sentences, but the same kind of theme,
related,
separated by a semicolon. You could just do two. You could
hyphen,
do a period
or
there,
a hyphen there,
or a period. But if you're doing a list, you're going to the list.
That is exactly correct.
Okay, give me an example of putting a hyphen.
I just said it. The RFK thing. Whatever he said about RFK.
That was a semicolon.
No, but I would use a hyphen rather than a semicolon because I don't like semicolons. I don't like apostrophes. I don't like semicolons, and I don't like that we read the same article.
A bad experience in grammar class?
Maybe I did.
Harriet Heinemann, your
I don't think
girlfriend?
I have to. She wasn't my girlfriend, by the way. She was not my girlfriend.
Carrie Franklin.
She was not my. Can I clarify? She was not my girlfriend. She really
Carrie
wasn't.
Franklin, thank you for calling.
Hello, Carrie.
Hi. You hear this all the time. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
We love that. Go ahead.
I admire you guys both so much. You keep me grounded. So
thank you.
I am a clinical researcher, so I write a lot of proposals for research.
Yeah.
Two things. I love the semicolon. It's beautiful. Sorry, I do. I hate when people use the colon instead. To use the period makes sentences short. They end up with 3 or 4 word sentences, and it doesn't look good. The other thing, and I think Margery would understand this, is the Oxford comma.
That's the serial comma thing, right? One comma and then another one? Is that what it is?
Well, it's after the word and. So if you have red, comma, white, and blue, Some people put red, comma, white, comma, and blue.
No.
There's no need for the comma in the and. If people do it all the time.
That is correct.
Can I tell you
But
something,
what is
Curry?
the
Curry,
Oxford
wait.
comma?
Curry, I have ended relationships over using the comma before and. Do you know, it really, Margery wants to know what the Oxford
Yeah.
is the serial thing and not doing it before the end. Am I not right about that, Curry?
Yes, exactly. So it's the and the comma together, and
Yeah.
there's no need because they both
No
serve
need.
the same purpose to me. Yeah, but
Curry-
people do it still.
That
Yeah,
was a
I do.
spectacular first call. Thank you. Make another one soon,
Boy,
please.
I learned that rule, but no one ever told me it was the Oxford comma. I did
Can I
not
ask,
know
I
that.
hate to
learned
ask you
something
this
today.
because you
What?
have lorded over me.
Yep.
Does the comma go inside the exclamation marks or outside the
Well, you know
exclamation
something? It's changing. I have noticed this. It used to always be that the comma was inside the
I hate that.
the quotations
I
or
hate that.
inside the explanation. No, well,
Parentheses.
parentheses or anything.
It is?
But now I've seen, you look at it, I've
Really?
seen the styles. I mean, the AP style section must have changed something. Now I see it outside, which I find extremely disturbing.
You know what else is the new trend? No apostrophes. Okay, that is a new trend too.
I think apostrophes are alive and well.
By the
Jim.
way, I've known Margery about 30 years,
Yeah.
give or take a year or two.
Jim's papers.
I have never
J-I-M
seen you use the
apostrophe S.
semicolon despite your representation. Pull up a couple of her stories, will you, from the
because
Herald or the Globe?
He's going to have to look at, I wrote
So,
1,000 stories.
let's look at
I
all
don't know.
1,000 of them.
There weren't many necessarily with semicolons, but there were occasions when you would use them, with lists
I
mostly.
doubt that, Margery.
Not the thing you said with RFK ripping off the medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
That's like two sentences separated by a semicolon. But with lists is where they're most often used.
Now, here's what, Jamie, did you write this top note on the, okay, here's the note,
Yep.
and I couldn't agree more. I love how when Margery is losing an argument with Jim, she whips out Harriet Heinemann or Jim's mother's ashes. She has weaponized your stories.
That's
That is
right.
totally
That's
true.
right. Jim's mother's ashes
It's like
were
the
in
last
were in the back
refuge of
his car,
scoundrels.
in the trunk of his car for 12
It
years.
was actually 20 years, actually, Margery.
20 years. 20 years. That's terrible.
wonder
Lauren
you're close
Acton,
by.
thank you for calling.
Hello, Lauren Acton.
Hi,
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call. It's the first time I've called and actually gotten through.
We're thrilled.
So this is exciting.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for
So-
calling.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about how my kids use zero punctuation
Oh.
at all, and like when there's like use of when you would use an exclamation point, they just write in all.
It's like the world is on fire.
How old are these kids, Laura?
21 and 22.
Ah. So how come you didn't correct the situation when they were young enough to be corrected?
Oh, yeah, that's a long story.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Well, they don't teach grammar anymore. That's why nobody knows it. I mean, you hear between you and I all the time, between you and I, between you and I.
Barack Obama says you and I,
He went
which
to
is
Harvard.
incredible.
He does. I've heard him say that many
So,
times.
Laura, how much does this upset you? It sounds like a lot. Is that a safe assumption?
Oh, it's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my youngest has a lot of like grammar issues. He has a language-based learning disability.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So he puts capitals where there shouldn't be capitals, and things like that.
Got it.
So, but their use of any kind of punctuation is like beyond them. And I talked to them about it, like, why don't you use a period? Put a period, like when I'm helping them write thank you notes to their grandparents or whatever. I'm like, please use proper grammar. And it's a struggle.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I love this call. That was an excellent, excellent call, Laura. Thank you for making it. Here's an anonymous text. A semicolon is like a Boston driver. Doesn't come to a complete stop. That is actually, thank you. That's a pretty good
one.
description of what a semicolon is, right?
Okay,
Do you
yeah.
find any semicolons in any of our stories, Jamie? I assume not,
He's
right?
not even looking.
None.
Don't even look.
He is
Ignore
looking.
him.
He is
Ignore him.
looking.
Ignore him. What are you supposed to do? Is search for semicolons?
Yes,
You can't do
yes,
that.
he is.
Okay. Somebody else points out, all capital letters drives me nuts. The exclamation point, everything becomes equally important after a while. This person finishes everything with 3 exclamation points. Dan Randolph says, overuse of ellipses means you can never finish a thought, Jim. And then someone else says, like Jim, I do love a good ellipsis.
Yeah, the ellipsis are really
They're very passionate
they're very
about it.
useful.
They're very passionate
They're
about
easy.
it.
Again, it's the 3-dot experience for those who do not know. So Jamie actually did a lot of research in the last few minutes.
Yep.
Here's what he writes. In a 2018 column that Margery wrote, was that the Globe or the Herald? Herald.
Might have been the Herald.
I counted,
no, that would have been the Globe by then.
whatever it was. I counted 10 M dashes, but not one single colon or semicolon. So what do you think of that, Margery?
I don't know what to make of that, Jim. There's a lot of columns there, and I know I used a semicolon from back at some point in my long career writing stories.
You're a little aggravated about this, aren't you? You're being outed.
I'm not aggravated.
For being semicolon free.
You know, what drives me crazy
is
that we only, many people are multilingual, right? If you're in Europe.
Not in this country.
And for the French, you're kind of obsessive and anal about their language. They want to make sure it's pronounced and spoken correctly.
Correct.
And there are different dialects and all that kind of stuff. We have one language to learn in the United States because we don't really get into many other languages, and it's English. And it kind of bothers me that no one cares. That no one cares about the proper way to talk. It doesn't matter to people anymore, or to write for that matter. And because the computer corrects you all the time now. When the little boy was writing a letter to his grandparents or thank you note, it's unusual to have to write without being corrected by a computer. I think that's part of the problem too. Anyway, I think it's laziness on our part. Susan from Dartmouth, thank you for calling.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm a former or retired ESL teacher.
Oh.
And I taught commas and I taught semicolons.
Yep.
And my students were better writers than a lot of native English speaking. And I wanted to correct Margery about the semicolon.
Please.
It's the colon that's used for a list. So if you say, I want to do the following, a colon, and then you list some things separated by commas.
Correct.
A semicolon is just the same thing as a period, but the two clauses are more related.
Exactly.
Okay,
I
Susan.
love punctuation.
Susan, that was excellent.
It's two different things. The semicolon can be used like the example you gave. RFK comes into my house, semicolon, he trashed the medicine cabinet.
Exactly.
But it can also be used in complex lists. Absolutely.
Not at the beginning of the complex list. That's what Susan was saying.
It's separating the complex lists.
Anonymous
You know what I mean?
texter wants to know, did the Herald even allow semicolons?
It was very controversial at the Herald.
Billy Bolger described the Globe as the Herald with verbs. I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Yeah, he meant that the Herald was the blue-collar paper and the Globe was the WASP paper. That's what he was thinking.
Okay, we're still searching, by the way, if people are interested. Jamie is searching nonstop for one semicolon in any column Margery ever wrote. You have 8 minutes left, Jamie, to come up with this, so work fast. Deborah and Acton, we are talking about punctuation. Those punctuation, what are they called? Punctuation things you like and those that really turn you off. Hi there, Deborah.
Hi there. So you guys, I have a million things to say. I'm going to make it as quick as I can. I'm an editor and I'm coming in hot.
I'm coming in hot.
So Margery, yes to semicolons for use of complex lists. Jim, you may not use a hyphen in place of what should be an M dash, EM as in E, Margery. And M dash is the purpose when you have a clause and then you want to do the M dash and then you're going to explicate more or embellish on the thought. So there also are three kinds of dashes. Or three things. There's a hyphen. There's the M dash that I just mentioned. There's also the N, E-N, as in Nicole, E-N dash, and that goes between two entities that if you're representing a range, like January 3rd, N dash, February 5th. Or 1865, N dash, 1869.
Wow.
Okay. Then my other thing is this. I see more and more in publications that nobody hires copy editors anymore, but I see in publications that should know better. When you have a compound adjective and one of the elements is an ly adverb, you do not stick a hyphen between them. If I am ideologically driven, it's not ideologically hyphen driven. The ly adverb as part of that compound adjective stands without the hyphen. Okay, those are my hot topics.
Let me tell you.
Yes on the Oxford. Yes on the Oxford comma. Okay.
You were spectacular,
But
Deborah.
if you do something like, there are certain times you do hyphenate, like a big time. Is big time one word or two words? You know what I mean? An example, Deborah,
Yes,
when you're
absolutely.
describing something, you put it.
Deborah
hyphen
knows the
in there.
answer.
But I have a question.
Wait, let her answer. Is it one word?
If you have a compound adjective, there's no ly adverb involved as part of the compound.
Yeah.
Then you sometimes, for clarity, will hyphenate, like my block-headed neighbor.
Okay, all right, that's a good one. That's a good one. But I have noticed something that's very distressing. It used to be that you would put the period, and then the quotation would follow the period or the exclamation point. Now I've seen the quotations followed by the period or the exclamation point.
How about it,
What is
Deborah?
going on there?
Okay, here's the real rule. The real rule is that commas and periods belong inside the terminal quote mark.
Mm-hmm.
The quote mark depending on if you're quoting I won't go into the details, but
Please.
The exclamation point or the question mark, unless it's part of quoted material, goes outside the terminal quote mark.
Wow.
Okay, but aren't I seeing quote marks?
Yes, you are.
Before the periods in the newspaper
Listen
and
to
elsewhere.
them.
Some people do it, and it's appalling. Yes.
It's appalling.
Deborah,
I
let
tell
me
you,
ask you on
it
Margery's
ruins my
behalf.
whole morning.
Deborah, could you have drinks with Margery every night for a month?
I would adore that.
Okay,
yes.
but hold on for 1 second,
This is the
Deborah.
happiest
I'm so
she's
glad
been
you
in
called.
10 shows,
so,
Deborah.
So, I mean, I sound like some crabby old lady,
You do,
that
actually,
back
yes,
in,
you do.
wants everybody to take Latin
so
and
do
stuff.
I, yeah, but go ahead.
But
Two
why
crabby
is
old
it that no
ladies.
one cares anymore? Because people don't care.
I care.
Here's my thing. So this is what we're talking about, honestly, and I struggle with this a little bit myself because I am not young, is riding the edge of the fact that language is an evolving and mobile entity, right?
Yeah.
Language changes,
Right.
usage changes. So, all the grammar rules and the stuff that I learned from the Chicago Manual to be able to do editing, some of it, I'm very attached to, and I have a hard time letting go. So I have to sometimes ask myself, is this important in this context?
Yeah.
And I find it a very hard balance to strike. I don't know how you guys feel.
Well,
Boy, that
thank you,
was
Deborah.
one
That was
hell
a
of a
great
call. Wow.
I'm working this through. I'm talking to my
I
therapist
don't think you
about
are working it through,
Having a
actually.
great deal of difficulty coping with the collapse of grammar and it's terrible to say.
What is
but it does make you think about someone when they have lousy grammar. Is this what is going on with this person?
So when
How-
I don't have an exclamation, when I don't have an apostrophe before the S, like Margery's potato,
Right.
you think less of me than you thought before?
No, if I were hiring somebody, and I've never been in this situation because
Yes.
I've never really hired
You hired
anybody.
Jamie. I was against
Yeah,
it.
but
You hired
but
him.
he didn't send us a letter.
Okay.
I
He
don't
did
think-
send
did
us
you
a letter.
You did send us
He
a
did.
letter, actually.
And let me tell you,
Actually,
I
it
didn't
was a
want
great letter with all
It was
these-
replete with semicolons.
No.
I hated it.
So I recall it was too many exclamation points. But he gave us all these great ideas for what we should do in the show. But I mean, if someone sent me a letter that was full of grammatical errors, I would be thinking, I don't know. What's this?
We can't read it because it's making fun of a competitor, but it's a very funny text.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that. We have time for a 30-second call from Brendan in Sagamore Beach. Hi, Brendan.
Okay, first time, long time, guys.
Thanks.
I don't know how to follow that caller.
No, that was incredible. No one can. No one can. Go ahead.
All right, first things first. A huge pet peeve of mine is N historic when somebody is trying to sound smart.
That's
so
right.
They say N historic.
I'm so with you.
That's right.
Excellent.
Like they're, like a London dock where they're like, N historic, But also, if you want a little homework,
please.
Look up what Kurt Vonnegut says about the semicolon. I don't want to say it on air.
I think we have it here, don't we, or do we?
I think we saw Kurt Vonnegut. He had some.
Can you say it with a
looking for
little
it.
redaction there, or no?
No, I prefer not to.
Okay, fine.
Okay, we don't
and then
have.
Also, as far as the Oxford comma goes,
Yeah.
the Oxford is using that comma because the second and third item can be lumped together without that comma in there. So smart people from Oxford put the comma in, like myself.
Let me tell you, you followed up beautifully that phone call. That was excellent, Brendan.
Well, I wish
Thank
I
you.
knew, because all we have about Kurt
We'll look it up.
Vonnegut is saying do not use semicolons. All they do is show you've been to college.
Well,
That's not off color.
no, it's not.
Okay.
We'll look
I
it up.
maybe thought it was a snobby kind of thing to use semicolons.
Those were excellent calls, by the way.
I don't feel that way. I feel
really
very attached.
excellent.
Semicolons and me. That's what I talk about every day. Okay, thank you very much for listening
Thank
to
you
this
very
show.
much.
And thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston Public Library
Thank you
to
all.
see
We
us. We really
appreciate it.
appreciate that. Tomorrow, we have a TikTok page at Boston Public Radio.
We still haven't found one semicolon in a Margery story.
Tomorrow, we're back here at the Boston Public Library with Harvard national security expert Juliet Kayyem, Carol Rose of the ACLU, Ken Casey, the Dropkick Murphys, is going to zoom in to talk about a great new album they've got about resistance. And we're going to talk about...
Excuse me 1 second. A friend of ours just texted me, Margery is awesome, semicolon. Jim is okay. Go ahead.
There's a semicolon person right
Exactly.
there, Jim. Good
Yeah,
friend
go
of yours,
ahead.
a semicolon
It's
person.
actually a good friend of yours, too.
Okay. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, additional support from Nia Harmon. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, and the guys across the street at the Lenox Hotel who parked the cars. Stay tuned to a best of edition of The Culture Show. Jared's got the day off, apparently, but The Culture Show goes on right after us on 89.7 GBH. Thank you, Jim. I know Harriet would be very proud of you today.
That's it?
That's it.
I'm Jim Browdy, semicolon. She is Margery Egan. We'll see you
Exclamation
tomorrow.
point.
We'll be back at the library. Please join us. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
What's trend?
The Haydn Trio Eisenstadt with your afternoon stretch. That's Beethoven's Archduke Piano Trio.
Support for WCRB comes from you and the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting